All right, so we got some of the folks back. It looks like we probably have a lot of people out still on lunch here in the Irving location. So if you can hear my voice, this is the call to start meandering back. And I'm going to start with a bribe here. So we do have a giveaway to do, and we're going to start with that here in just a minute. And let me ask Amelia, can I guarantee that that's not a bobblehead? We can absolutely guarantee it is not a bobblehead. So if you're hearing my voice, you're going to want to roll in here. So we're going to do a couple quick shout outs before we start that. So for our folks on the remote right now, I'd like to go ahead and say hello again to all of our remote locations that are out there at the moment. I'm going to throw yet another shout out to the Atlanta group specifically. I'll have you guys know, those of you guys who are trying to break like 17 minutes too early to go take lunch, I tried to get Marcus O, who runs your user group, to step up and hold the line. Yeah, he wouldn't hold the line. He was afraid to actually stop you all from going direct to lunch. So for the crew out there in Atlanta, that's why you actually got lunch at the time you did. He wasn't willing to step up and say, no, not yet. So, and the rest of it here, let's see where we're at. So we're going to go ahead and try a drawing, I think. And let's see.
Try it.
Woohoo, let's see how this goes.
Alrighty. Okay. If you are number 209063, anybody got that ticket?
209063, nobody, anybody?
All right, let's try one more.
All right, let's try one more shot here.
All right. 209030.
209030, anybody?
All right, well, why don't I give a little sales pitch?
Okay, what do we got?
For this giveaway. It's called the Ultimate Geek Pen. So it's pretty cool. So the first, it's 5 devices in one. Flashlight, UV light, laser pointer, pen, and a stylus tip. Cameron, you wanna?
The 5-in-1 geek, no, hold on, wait. I like the I'll take it approach. That's a good one.
I'll take it.
Yeah, first one that called it. No. How about this? For the first person who can raise their hand and call out location of System Center Universe last year. I heard a Las Vegas. I heard an Austin. Who is the Austin one? Right there? All right, that's our man right there. Go ahead and see her for your,
come on down.
For your giveaway on that one. Good job. All right.
We've got 3 more.
Oh, we have more.
We have 3 of them.
I have to come up with more Trivial
3
Pursuit
more
questions? Yeah, should have prepped this ahead of time. All right, the first, Austin, dang, he already got it. Okay. All right, the first person who can tell us what country our next presenter is from. Netherlands, right there. He's got it. All right.
Here you are, sir.
Excellent. All right, and I got 1 more or 2 more? How's this going, Amelia?
Okay, 2 more.
2 more, wow, okay. All right. First person who can tell me where Travis Wright lives. Utah, very good. I heard it over here. Who called it out? Write it up, or go ahead, over here. She's the one who called it out first. Good job. So we got a Utah out of that one. Excellent. I need some more Trivial Pursuit here. All right. So let's see. We need 1 more, right?
We're going to step it up. This is a Windows to go.
A Windows to go. Okay,
yes.
So this one we got to come up with something really good. All right. Let's see. How about the first person who can tell us where Pete Zerger, our later presenter this afternoon, what website Pete Zerger runs? I hear one back center. Who called it? That right there? All right, that's the man right back there.
New proud owner of a Windows to go. Come on down. 1 more question for the Ultimate Geek Pen.
Oh, wow. Okay, we got to come up with 1 more yet again. So, all right. Let's see. Who else have we got on the roster that we haven't talked about yet? Let's see. We'll go 1 more Trivial Pursuit question because I doubt very many people will know this one. How many, or the first person who can call out the location in the country where Pete Zerger lives? Spring, Texas? Yeah, hold on. Is he right, Pete? Is he right, Pete? He's right. All right, the men in the back there called it out. That's quite scary and quite impressive at the same time. All right, that's our winner.
Come on down.
Excellent. So that's our giveaways from here locally. So, yeah, we're trying to reward the stalkers here. Notice we didn't ask any questions about me. It's all good. All right, so a couple of quick things here. So first off, I gotta hand it out to Mr. Maarten Hoot over here in the front row. You're going to see him come up here in just a moment. He, as far as I'm aware, has got to be the winner for the person who came the furthest, at least from a presenter perspective, for this event. Coming here all the way from the Netherlands, that's pretty dang impressive. So kudos to Maarten, kudos to OpsMgr crew and the Civision crew, all of them who came in from the Netherlands for this event. And second, since I got the mic and Maarten's a little bigger than I am, but he's sitting out there so he can't do anything about it, I'm going to tell a quick story about Mr. Maarten. All right, so I met him about 6, 7 years ago now. And the two of us were attending, and several other people, actually some of which may be in attendance in the audience right now, we were at an event that Microsoft was teaching. And we're sitting in the second, I'm in like the back row, he's in like the second to the back row, because as somebody tweeted, not too many of us will sit in the front row, that's just the way we do things, right? And I'm watching his blog and seeing the stuff he's putting up. There's some really good information going up there from what we're learning at this event, right? And about an hour later, it starts getting picked up by other blogs. A couple hours later than that, it starts getting picked up by major news sources. Like, huh, quite interesting, right? So we're pointing this out to Maarten, kind of congratulating him. Good job, man, you're getting picked up by the news and all the rest of it. Now, what Microsoft forgot was they didn't tell us this was an NDA event. Okay, we didn't sign anything. They never told us anything. So Maarten was not in the wrong, but I will say that very quickly thereafter, Maarten became an MVP. And as an MVP, everything he knows is under NDA now. So just saying behind the scenes. So with that, let me welcome up Mr. Maarten Hoot, president of both OpsMgr and Innovative.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you. Okay, that's quite a story. Luckily, all the content I have today for the next hour isn't confidential, so you guys go ahead and share it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever you want. A shout out to all the attendees here and also the virtual attendees and some of my Belgian and Dutch friends where it's already night, so probably beers and good stuff there already. And well, again, thank you for allowing me to do a presentation. My presentation is called Exploring the Dark Side of the Moon. I wanted to give you another view on how you could use System Center Operations Manager, monitor some of the pieces you might have, but you might not be monitoring today with Operations Manager. And then, of course, also have a look into 2012 SP1, what that brings, and what we can have today now that SP1 is already available. Well, it's all about cloud, right? If you look at the System Center 2012 release and all the components within the System Center suite, you see that it's all geared towards enabling cloud for your company, for your enterprise, whether it's private cloud, whether it's public cloud, or even with SP1, you see all this functionality now available for hosters and for creating hosted clouds. And of course, we want to have these cloud enablement, we want to bring in self-service, we want to bring in things like show back, charge back, and self-service delivery of services we'll be providing. But we're doing that because we want to run an app, because we want to run a service for our company that we can do business with our customers with. So I want to talk today app-centric or service-centric on how System Center and specifically Operations Manager enables that scenario and how System Center 2012 delivers some new functionality. Now I've said services because if you look at the whole suite and also in Operations Manager, it's not just this single server anymore, it's not this single component anymore. Everything has a relationship. There are quite some dependencies in your environment and you want to maintain that, manage that, and monitor that as a whole, I guess. And if you look at Operations Manager, starting with 2007, and then again in 2012 and SP1, we are quite service-centric. You have the availability to create distributed applications on top of those component monitoring. So I'm going to show you today in my demonstration on how you can create that out of the box, but also extend it with solutions like the guys from Civision have. Now, if you look at cloud, and Joey Snow is going to talk about this much more detail on 3 p.m. About Windows Azure, you see that Microsoft has a public cloud offering, and it used to be platform as a service, where you have your .NET app, you compile it, and you store it on Windows Azure, you don't really care about the operating system, but you care about the app and the code you're running on top of there. And then back late last year, we now have the preview or the release preview of infrastructure as a service, where you can actually take a virtual machine on Windows Azure, or you can copy a virtual hard disk that you have in Hyper-V and store it on Windows Azure and care a bit about the OS. Now with that, it also introduces a reason to start monitoring, because from an app perspective, we have the ability from Operations Manager to do things like synthetic transactions and what have you to run web tests. But of course, if you're running the OS and you need to maintain the OS in such a thing as public cloud, you also want to make sure that you monitor the OS. And because Windows Azure is also cross-platform, you can run your Windows OS, you can run your Linux OS. You want to make sure that we are able to monitor that, and that's where Operations Manager steps in. I want to give you a quick precursor to what Joey's going to show this afternoon and give you an impression of what you can do with Windows Azure today. So if we can switch to the demo. There we go. I've logged into manage.windowsazure.com with my live ID, and I have a subscription, of course, where I can then create my pieces in Windows Azure. And on the left-hand side, you see all the pieces that I can create in Windows Azure today, so things like websites, virtual machines, mobile services, cloud services, SQL, and such. But also, if you look from networking perspective, we now have the ability to do like site-to-site VPNs. So if you want to then have communication back to VMs and apps and back on-premise, and you want to create this service, that's certainly possible today. And it also would help, of course, to start do some monitoring in the cloud. Now, if you look here below, I have the button New, and when I click that, I have the ability to create a website, create a virtual machine, create a mobile service. And if I go to Create Virtual Machine, I can just create SCU Win 002, pick an image template, for instance, Windows Server 2012, Windows Server 2008, etc. I can pick the size of my VM. I can give it a password so I can log in as administrator. I'll enter a password and the location to create it in. So for instance, West US. Hit next and it's now creating. Again, if I hit New and I go to Virtual Machine, there's also a gallery. And this is, for instance, where you see that Azure is also cross-platform, where we deliver images such as SUSE Linux, Ubuntu, OpenLogic, what have you. And you now also have the availability just announced to create your own gallery or store your images and your Linux flavors, if you will. Now, the VMs, if you go to the Win001 we already created, you get some basic information about CPU, perf, and other things. If we scroll down, we see the DNS name, we see the IP address, and that's all fine. But if you want to go a step further, there's actually an Azure Management Pack today for monitoring apps on Azure. But certainly with just deploying the Operations Manager agent on such an OS, you can do so. You'd need to add an extra endpoint, because by default you can only RDP into a VM. But if you want to add ports like 5723 or something Operations Manager-wise, you could certainly start monitoring such a Windows VM. Now, I've also created, here we go, a Linux VM. It's running SUSE Linux. And I actually will be using that for my demo later on. And that's running fine. It's running in the European data center. And it's running with one CPU and on this DNS host name. Now, this is all virtual machines. I guess as much as we're running that on-premise today, we could do that in Azure or even with SP1 in a hosted cloud. But we talked a bit about apps. And the thing you can do, of course, if you're an app developer, and in this case, I've downloaded the My To-Do sample from the Azure SDK. I can load that up. I can have my code, and here you see my solution with all these items. And then there's a web section called myto-do.web, which actually holds the roles I want to publish and which I need to run my application. Now, if I right-click, instead of just having build and the other options, today in Visual Studio 2012, I also have the option to publish. And this allows me to publish the app into Windows Azure without caring about the OS, but just get an instance, a web role, and run the app there. Now, how would you go about? You would say in Azure, new, I want to have a website. Go quick create, or sorry, custom create. There we go. Give it a URL, SCU, my to-do. It's available, West US. We need a SQL database. Give it a connection string. There we go. Say next. We'll give the database a name. We'll leave it a standard. Say new SQL server. Login name, Azure, and a password. And then leave the region for SQL also in the West US. And it's now creating. It'll take a few seconds, but if I go back to the one I've already created, here's the SU my to-do, then what you see is we can actually download a publishing profile. And if I import the publishing profile, here we go. It's actually fairly quick. And I go a bit below, I can say download publishing profile, save it, and if I go back to Visual Studio and I hit import, go to the downloaded file, this is the one. It will just pre-populate all the fields, all the names, the passwords, the protocols, the URLs I need. Say I'll publish this, and then Windows or Visual Studio goes about building the project, deploying it to Windows Azure with a web deploy method, and in a couple of seconds it'll open up the URL, and you'll see that we just spun off a new instance of our app, and then have that running without any taking care of the operating system. Now with the Azure Management Pack, you then go into the authoring section, supply the name, supply the certificate name, password you need, and then it would discover the instance. And just as you do regular monitoring for things like IIS websites, you'd see the same instance coming as an Azure website, which you can then use for your service monitoring, I guess. That it is, a new instance. OK. If we go back to the slides, we have multiple options. If you look at how Microsoft approaches this, it's not public cloud only. Certainly, you want to have a private cloud in your environment. What we do is we take whatever fabric you have, so Citrix hypervisors, VMware hypervisors, we take Hyper-V, of course. With VMM 2012, we can connect back to storage, which is SMIS compatible. We can have in SP1 virtual networks running on top of, for instance, Hyper-V. And we take all these fabric components and on top of there start creating our clouds. And those are like capacity pools where we can then deploy our apps into. And if you look at how Windows Server 2012 does that and how VMM 2012 does that, it's actually, again, very app-centric. So instead of trying to specify only this is the OS and this is the hardware configuration for my virtual machine, I can also specify all the service items that we need to build our app and to build our service. And I'll show you. If we can go back to the demo, I'll go into Virtual Machine Manager. What you see in Virtual Machine Manager here is my environment where I have about 5, 6 Hyper-V hosts with quite some memory running fine. And if I scroll down, I see that I can add things such as networking, I can add storage, and with the introduction of Hyper-V 2012 and support for SMB and VMs on SMB, I also can add file servers which can host my virtual machines. If I go into the VMs and services view, I see things like the all hosts view, which then show all the virtual machines running on all these hosts, and I have quite a bit running here. But I also have the clouds. And if I go to, for instance, the workload cloud, and I take the properties, you'll actually see that on top of all these hosts, on top of all these hypervisors, I create a cloud, and most importantly, I specify the capacity that this workload cloud has, and I can limit it and say, no, I don't want it to have unlimited memory, but it can only take up 200 gigs of memory. And then with the other items in System Center, we can start to deliver that self-service, carve out some capacity, create some service requests, and then allow the user to request their own VMs. With SP1, we also see things like tenants, and you there see the support coming in for things like hosted clouds. Now, if I go back to the library, this is all VM-centric, but if you look at the library, and I expanded a folder called Stock Trader. Stock Trader is an app I'd like to deploy on this cloud. And if I go into the SAV folder, you see a virtual application called ST5 Business Service. And what this means is this is a virtual application package, a server app V package. And this is just a bubble, if you will, that holds all the server components for this type of middleware. But we also have items such as SQL database configuration, how the website should be configured, etc. If we scroll to the top and we go to service templates, I've prepared the Stock Trader service templates, and this is where you see the service centricity or the app centricity. And we open that up in the designer. You see that we have a 4-tier application coming up. And because of my resolution, I'll scale it a bit. There we go. We'll see that this is a 4-tier application. Here we go. That on the left-hand side holds the definition for my databases. I guess you guys can't really see it that well. I'll try and zoom it to fit the window. And then you zoom it to zoom a bit in. There we go. You can see the SQL databases on the left-hand side. You can see the middleware, 2 tiers, and you can see here the IIS websites. So if I double-click this tier, it holds both the hardware configuration for the VM, what's the memory, CPU power you need. It does also specify the OS configuration. So if you're running a template, it will specify the configuration for the OS. But if you go to application configuration, you actually see that we have the SQL databases here that will get configured as part of deploying this service. Now, the only thing I'd need to do is hit configure deployment and say I want to have a production instance of Stock Trader, and then select the cloud where I want to deploy it to, hit OK, and it starts to generate the deployment, and we can hit deploy, and it'll take up, depending on the speed of your network and the machines, just a few minutes to deploy all the pieces in the right order. Now, the neat thing about this is once I do it this way, and I have the VMM to Operations Manager connector, it will actually push the configuration of this service all the way into OM. And we'll get our first distributed application and our first understanding of the service we're providing on these virtual machines and on this cloud. And then with the OM to Service Manager connector, it actually gets pushed further on to Service Manager as part of the CMDB and your first business service definition, which you can then add on to and get an understanding of the service you're running. So this whole service centricity is a key part of System Center 2012, and especially in this case, Virtual Machine Manager. Now, if we go back to the slides, there we go. We see that System Center 2012 delivers this unified management for the cloud. It has this self-service component where users can actually start requesting an app, a service, a VM, whatever component you want to provide. There's a model behind, so a service catalog, which defines what are the items we're actually providing to the user. We have a piece, service delivery and automation. That's where Orchestrator, for instance, comes in, and Pete will talk about that around 4:30. We then have components within System Center who do configure, deploy, and also monitor and operate. And if you map the various titles, you'll see that Service Manager delivers the front end to the user, App Controller delivers the front end to, well, the IT admin or a certain business unit, Orchestrator for technical enablement for service delivery from a technical perspective, Service Manager for the process side of things, reviews within a process, and then Virtual Machine Manager, Operations Manager, Configuration Manager, and Data Protection Manager to do all the configure, deploy, monitor, and operate. So that's how we should position System Center 2012. Now, if we're going to look at Operations Manager and how this supports such a scenario, I want to introduce a scenario and work off of that scenario in my demonstration. So let's say today we're Contoso Bank. We're running a business-critical trading floor application called Stock Trader. We already have System Center. It's our platform of choice. We want to build Operations Manager and then monitor all app components across all platforms. So whether it's Linux, Unix, SQL, Oracle, what have you. But also provide insights both for our own roles, more IT admin roles, and of course C-level who wants to have some summarization dashboards of what have you. Now, Operations Manager is key here. We can do things like network monitoring. In 2012, it's actually quite an extensive feature where we have things like vicinity view, we can have dashboards, drill downs. With SP1, over 4,000 models were added to network monitoring. So if you want to do network monitoring, be sure to look at SP1. We can do the virtualization stack. Through VMM, we get all the Hyper-V information. You've seen the Veeam pack, for instance, if you want to do the VMware piece of it. With the Azure Management Pack, we can do things like cloud monitoring and have a health status of the app we're running in Azure. Operating system, and we'll show that in the demos. And then, of course, monitoring the application and the application components. And we'll look at that in the demonstration as well. Now, these management packs, of course, are key to Operations Manager. Without them, it'd be an empty framework. With Management Pack, things will light up. We get an understanding of what should we monitor, how will we find it, when is it going to be a problem, and things like knowledge on how to solve it, and things like reports and what have you. Now, these management packs, if you look at the Microsoft ones, are delivered through their website at no charge. You can load them and you're good. There are some vendors providing management packs. And of course, we have the integration between the components that deliver information from a management perspective as well. And the management packs deliver two key things: alerting and getting you some insights in what components are down or what performance is degraded, but also the objects you'd need to start visualizing the service that you're providing to your user and all the health perspectives, I guess, of the application that we're starting to provide. Now, if you look at the cross-platform piece, Operations Manager delivers operating system monitoring out of the box for things like SUSE Linux, Red Hat, Solaris, HPUX, what have you. In SP1, actually new and other versions are added. For instance, Oracle Linux is now one that's added, and some of the current builds of the others. So the operating system part of it is covered by System Center Operations Manager. And then if you look at things like J2EE, that's also part of System Center Operations Manager 2012 now as well. We'll look at things like the Oracle Management Pack and others to give you an insight in how you should approach that. So let's switch to the demo. I'll quickly go back to Virtual Machine Manager to show you that on my environment and on my hosts, I actually have both Windows and Linux VMs running. So if I go to all hosts and I scroll a bit down, then you can barely see it, I guess, but I'll zoom in a bit. The operating systems of the VMs I'm running, most of them are Windows Server 2012 64-bit, but for instance, here's a SUSE Linux VM running on Hyper-V. And if I take that one and I hit the properties, there we go. You'll actually see that VMM detects that this is a SUSE Linux VM and that it has all the integration components installed. We'll see that here, SUSE Linux. And then if I hit the console as part of showing you that that's a real SUSE Linux VM, you'll see that it's running SUSE Linux version 11. So we're going to work with that VM to start monitoring. Now, to show you some basics, I've installed PuTTY, and I'm SSH logging into the VM. I'll use root, welcome 01. Here we go. And then you can see this is the Linux VM, and we have some information from the system that shows us CPU, memory, what have you. Now, in Operations Manager 2012, I've already added this particular VM, so the discovery is already ran and we can see some useful information. And you see here in Operations Manager that we have a view called Unix Linux computers, and if I hit that, I've actually added 2, of which one is the SUSE 01. And for those of you familiar with Operations Manager, if I then right-click the SUSE Linux VM and I do diagram view, it actually picks up on all the components on that VM, so things like the network adapter, the disk, but also, much like in the Windows side of things, the operating system class, and, well, there are quite some monitors associated, so we get the basic monitoring out of the box with Operations Manager. Now, if we want to have more detailed dashboards, we can scroll down. There's a default view called Unix Linux computers, and if I expand those, you can see things like operating system health, and you get a dashboard on the state of the operating system. You can go to things like logical disk capacity, or we can have a look at things like other performance counters, and we can select one and give you an impression of the performance that's being collected, and that's all fine. Now, if we go to the authoring space, let's say you have a certain process you want to monitor, and it's not part of the operating system management pack we deliver out of the box, and you go to management templates, you see that there are also a few templates that we deliver. So if it's a daemon, a Unix Linux service, if you will, that you want to monitor, just use our wizard from this template and add that. Things like process in memory, maybe a log file where you want to check for a certain word or something that you want to have a monitor for that shows up as part of the health of your operating system, you can do from here and just run the wizards. Now, what if I would want to extend that with things like scripts? So maybe they're running like an Oracle application on this box, and it's writing files to a directory. I want to see the file age. Isn't it too old? And want to be warned if it's older than 10 minutes, what have you. How would you approach that? Well, in my case, this is a SUSE Linux VM, and what I've did is I've actually installed, and I'll hit this command, the Nagios plugins. And those Nagios plugins are available through GPL. You can just use them. And they actually have some prefabricated scripts. And I'll go to the directory, give you a listing, and you see all the scripts I get out of the box. But your Unix admin might have others as well. In this case, it actually already has a check file age, so I can just use that and not have to think about my own script. I can say, well, I'll create a test file in the temp directory. Okay, that's there. And then I'll say I want to check the file age. What are the commands? Well, just run help first. And we see, oh, we need to specify the warning level, which is going to be 13/1600 seconds. And then we'll say the test file we want to check. And it says, okay, it's 20 seconds old, 5 bytes, we're all good there. So now this is a bit much to start looping back into Operations Manager. So what I'll do is I'll actually change the script so it doesn't output all this collateral, but just like okay or warning or critical, depending if we breach those thresholds. So if you go into the script, you have to find out a bit, I guess, where the print section is, like here, file age result. And we can just say, well, we'll get rid of the rest. We just want to have the result and loop that back in Operations Manager. And you can create the command as you see fit. Here we go. If I run the same command now, so check the file age, it now only gives you back OK, warning, or critical, and I can use that actually in Operations Manager. So how would you go about? Go back to Operations Manager. We're still in the authoring section. There's not a template. Well, not a problem. Go to Monitors. Create yourselves a new monitor. And we'll say a unit monitor, a single check for something that rolls up health. Under scripting, you'll find actually a 2-state and a 3-state Unix Linux shell command monitor. And of course, we need to select the management pack where we'll save it in. Some general information like file, age, monitor, the name, the target, so where to run this monitor. Now, this is a SUSE Linux VM. It's quite specific to this one. So, well, it's going to take another session to maybe explain how to target. But let's say we'll just filter on SUSE Linux Enterprise. It'll come back with all the classes we have. This one was in 11.0, and we take the operating system class. So it's only targeted these types of machines. Run it, let's say, every 2 minutes. Hit next. And then, of course, the script. Well, again, that was the same one we actually just used. So we'll say run the script, lib nagios plugins, the check file. Oh, no typos, otherwise we're not going to see a demo. And then say the test file and the warning and critical thresholds. Use the Unix Linux action account. Actually, that's much approved in 2012. We don't need to have root access anymore. We can have a regular user, and if it needs elevated rights, we can actually use sudo. So that's all good. I've pre-configured this one. Now I need to tell it when is this going to be a critical problem. Well, if the output is critical, the output of the script, if you will, and I'll capture that context. So we'll use it later on actually in the alert. The warning expression should be warning. There we go. Hit next. And then for the healthy expression we just saw, it's actually okay. So that's all fine. And then configure health, so whether or not warning, critical, and how the states roll up. And then we can have an alert generated. And then if you want to use the output of the script, you can just use the text we just copied from the wizard, and that'll be part of your alert. Great. So that's being created. Script will kick in. OpsMgr will just, through the Unix Linux agent, run the script, capture the output, and give it back to you as health of this operating system. So that's all good. And so if you want to go further than just the standard monitoring operations manager, you can actually do so. And if I go back to the view, it should actually show up as a monitor now as part of this operating system. Well, we'll come back to that in a second. If we switch back to the slides, here's the remote. Then there's another key piece in Operations Manager that delivers application insights. And it was a company, Avicode, that Microsoft purchased a few years ago. With Operations Manager 2007, it was still more or less a separate product. With 2012, it got integrated, and it's now called APM. And with APM, you get deep-level insight into your .NET apps. It works with the .NET, with what they call a .NET interceptor. It looks at code, it looks at performance, at health, and rolls that back into Operations Manager. So in essence, it's a lightweight profile. We can start isolating and triaging issues, and then provide the application team with the details they need. There's a nice screen where you can have all the information on the stack, the trace, and other information is actually surfaced about load times of files, error codes it gets back, etc., etc. Now, APM in SP1 has much improved. Instead of just the web applications that are .NET, we can now also use Windows services that are .NET and start using those. Okay. Oh, I guess I left link on. It's my colleague Mark. Well, he's one up to him. We're actually in the middle of his session. So, Mark, I'm in the middle of something. Can this wait? Want to make sure we don't waste too much of your time. Oh, well, I know your team is doing proactive monitoring of the stock trader service, and we just added some Oracle instances to the backend. You might want to add to Operations Manager. Yeah, maybe a good idea to add those so we don't skip any monitoring. So let's respond. Thanks for updating. We'll add them now. Okay. So Oracle monitoring, yes, one of those big things. I guess everybody seems to have Oracle. How would you go about? Well, if we go back to the demonstration, you probably have seen, if you visited the vendor area here, is that OpsLogic does provide an Oracle management pack. And the key thing actually is that we don't rely on the Unix Linux agent. I'm sorry? Amen. So even if there's not a Unix Linux agent on the operating system, and I hear that's a good thing, we can still monitor it because we use the Oracle data channel. So we pick and choose an OpsMgr agent from which you want to do the monitoring. We then drop a module. We're all native to the product, so we handle it with what's now called the MPB, the management pack bundles in OM12. Make sure all the configuration happens, and then talk to your Oracle instance. And if you look at the UI, you now get to add that. I'll close this one off. There's just a simple UI. You pick and choose the OpsMgr agent you want to use, in my case, the management server, but it can be any agent in essence. We specify the information from Oracle, like a server name, instance, username, password. We only need the minimum rights, the read rights, to get some information back. Select the instance, and if I then go back to instance state, you see actually the instance showing up. And if we look at the diagram view, we actually have a breakdown in all the components we can see. So in this case, it's an Oracle Linux, an Oracle instance running on Oracle Linux. And then if we expand that a little bit more, you'll actually see that we have things like the databases that are monitored, the files that are monitored, log files that are monitored, and refreshing goes a bit slow, but I think you get the feeling that we have a lot of detail into what we show you. Now, that's not the only thing. If you actually look at that instance and we hit the Health Explorer, I guess just like the Veeam guys had showed you, the key there is to have good monitors, but also have knowledge associated, so that when it's a problem, and we look at things like table space, availability of, let's say, this database, and I say table space status, and go to like the data file status, you actually see that all this knowledge is in place to assist you into getting a resolution, or at least know what's happening while you're getting this error. So that's all good. Now we also collect performance. So for instance, if we go to table space for performance, we try and give you an understanding of things like free space, average growth, IOPS, number of clients connected, and what have you. And in this case, I've selected the table space free space. Now, if I go back into that Oracle, or if I go into that Oracle machine, so not the SUSE one, but the Oracle one, here we are, we can verify that this is a Linux. There we go, same deal, it's running. And if you look, you actually see that it's installed Oracle Linux, and then with Oracle 11.2.0. Now, if we shut down the Oracle instance, and we'll give them the instance name, and through the years, apparently, I've got to know a bit of Oracle. And I say SQL plus. There we go. I can say shut down, get rid of this Oracle one, and it will shut down. And then, well, depending on the monitor configuration, it'll be another 120 seconds maximum before it shows up as state in Operations Manager. And we'll get back to that in a few minutes so we can have a look at the end result. Now, if we go back to the presentation, this was all like component monitoring, all these bits and pieces, but we want to get to this service monitoring state. Like, how would we visualize this? How would we get this to the right level of detail for every role associated and make sure that you see the right things? Well, we, of course, need to get various layers of monitoring. We want to provide a dashboard for technical folks. We want to provide a dashboard for C-level. We want to provide dashboards for geography, or dashboards for data centers. We want to make sure things get visualized in a way that it helps you in assisting, finding the problem, but also a quick resolution and a quick mean time to resolution. So various layers of monitoring. And of course, we have some capabilities in the product, like distributed application, and those of you working with OpsMan have probably already found that, but also saw that that's just the basic element of visualizing things. Of course, we'd love to get to the CIO dashboards, and that's where Subvision actually comes in. So let's have a look at the CIO dashboards. Oh, that's Vincent. Well, we'll ignore Vincent for a second and come back to him in a minute. Can we go to the demonstration? There we go. What I loaded is the Subvision authoring tool. They have a product called Live Maps where you can visually start modeling your applications. And if you look at the left-hand side, you see all the folders I have in Operations Manager. Those that have a live map will be associated with a green round circle. And on the bottom, we see the components that we can use to drag on those services. Now, I've created a map called my application map. What you do is you draw it out in Visio or whatever method you prefer. And then you see visually how the application works. And I can just drag and drop components on top of here and start hiding, for instance, the label and hide the image. And if I do it that way, I will actually get, oh, there we go, image visible. I actually get a state icon associated on this map. I can do this for the Unix and Linux ones I have. I can do it for all the other classes, because if I hit add class, I can take any management pack in my environment. For instance, even if I take the Oracle one and just say, well, I want to have an Oracle instance on there, hit OK. I'll get back my Oracle instance, and then I'm able to put that on the map. So this is a visual way of doing that. If we look at some of the maps I've prepared, and I go back into the dashboard folder, and maybe give you a last look into the instance. There we go. The Oracle one just went red. If we do a diagram view, it will show. And if we look at the Health Explorer, we'll see that the instance connection is down, and we get knowledge on how to repair that. And we'll actually, so it's green, we'll say we want to have the Oracle instance back up. Say start up, and in a minute or two it'll turn green again. Now the dashboards I've created are here. If you would to do that, for instance, with Oracle, what you could do is say, well, I want to have a top-level dashboard called Oracle. I can have a look at my Oracle hosts, my Oracle database, my Oracle high availability situation, my Oracle application, but anything else will work as well. You get the relevant alerts. Like here, the Oracle instance is actually down. Well, we know, we just fixed that. If I double-click and we do a drill down, you see the Oracle host. So in this case, I'm using information both from Hyper-V, the states of the Hyper-V hosts, the state of the SUSE VM, but also the state of Oracle. And I can have a drill down again, double-click, have a deep dive into my Oracle database, have a look at things like the Oracle instance, the worker processes, the database, what have you. But also can get a perspective like we just saw on the application. So how is data traffic flowing? How is it connecting back into Oracle, etc. Now if I go scroll down, under private cloud, I've actually prepared some others as well. For instance, the HP blades where I'm running this on. So I've created a view that represents the blades, the chassis, but on top of that, also the state of the Hyper-V OS is running on there. I can do things like HP fabric, the backside of things. And because we have network monitoring in OM12, you can just say, well, from here on, I want to have a diagram view of this switch. I want to have an understanding of the ports that are enabled for port monitoring. I want to have a drill down into all the components behind this. So Live Maps complements, I guess, Operations Manager with more visualizing the applications, the data centers, and all these services that you're providing with Operations Manager and your cloud. Now, if we go back to the presentation, that's where Vincent comes in again. Well, we're in the middle of something. I'll turn off my link client after this. I think Vincent was quite busy. This is quite urgent. I'm not sure if we meet the stocks trader SLA. We're getting signals that the capacity might be insufficient. Can we show forecasts of app components? Well, normally that's quite a thing, right? How would we forecast and predict things in Operations Manager? We do have 4 perspectives. We have availability, performance, security, configuration. But if you look at the performance views, the graphs are always looking back, the things we've collected and trying to analyze ourselves what's going on and is this a trend, where's this going? So what we'll use is, well, yes, we're going to look at that, but we're going to use the OpsLogic capacity pack to have a look if we can get a capacity view into some of our components. So capacity management is a big word, of course. Like, what are we trying to achieve here? Well, again, there are various layers. We could have a look at the capacity of one component, let's say disk free space. Is that how many months do we have left on this disk? Service capacity, all the components that make up our service and the capacity perspective there, and then business capacity. But if you look at component capacity, again, in Operations Manager, in a performance view, you'd have a look at all the performance we'd collected in a certain time frame. But from a capacity management perspective, we want to have a trend. We want to do analysis like, how is this going? Is it going up? Is it going down? We want to take that trend line and start to plot it into the future, maybe another 6 months, another 12 months. And we want to set thresholds. When, to us as business, is there going to be a problem? Do I need a minimum of 10% free, 20% free? And then we'll do analysis, see whether or not the trend line will breach through the threshold. And in this case, it's actually breaching the warning threshold. And then we can see from a time perspective, oh, hey, there's only 70 days left. And, well, it's up to you, I guess, as a capacity manager to make sure that we handle it before we run out of this disk space. Well, this is something that I wanted to show you guys. If we go back to the demonstration and we go to my workspace, I'll create a new view. There we go. It's loading. I'll say new dashboard view. And we'll say we want to have a grid layout. And that's actually the neat new thing about Operations Manager 2012. We now have this dashboard framework. We can have a dashboard with all these widgets, and then even vendors can provide widgets now for this dashboard. So we can say grid layout. I want to say Oracle capacity SCU. Next. I'll give it a 4-cell layout. Say evenly distributed. Hit next, hit create, and I'll create an empty dashboard. And within that dashboard, I can have widgets. We'll add one. You'll see it's sorted by vendor. I'll take the OpsLogic one first and then talk a bit about the Savision one. It's a capacity widget. I'll say, well, I want to have for this database the table space capacity. There we go. Of course, I need to select the counter and the object of which we want to do trending and capacity. So I can say, well, the database is called sys auxiliary, and it'll look up the item in Operations Manager, in this case sysox, but any perf counter will work. Say, well, from this Oracle instance, we want to have table space free, but we could take Hyper-V, for instance, disk. Say sysox. OK. Next, and we want to say, well, turn the state to critical when we only have 10% free in the next 30 days, and it's actually descending towards our threshold. Hit next. from January 1st, we'll show, well, 30 days in the widget. And say create, hit close. And what you see is you get your first trend line. It's actually healthy, so it's not going to breach your thresholds in the next few days, next few months. But you get a widget, and then on the view I've already prepared, you actually see that you can use all these other widgets you have, like the standard perf view. You can have your state view. Of course, you can have your alerts view, what have you not, to create dashboards for things, in this case, like Oracle and or Hyper-V. If I take another example I've created, like storage, you'll actually see that for this Hyper-V host, it's called standalone host 2, PCI ST2. There's a counter in OM called logical disk percentage free space, and well, you can see on the dark blue line that it's actually getting less, the free space. But from a trend line perspective, it's breaching our threshold in actually 5 days. So we get an understanding that, well, with this, we're going to be under 5% free space in the next 5 days. And then if I go back to the capacity pack, actually we raise an object as well. So I go back to capacity state. You see that we create views for those. But if I go to diagram view, it's actually an object in OM, a capacity object that you again then can use in distributed applications, that you can use in live maps, what have you. And we also raise alerts, so you can pick them up with things like orchestrator and start adding capacity to this component as you see fit. Now you just saw really briefly that Savision is also coming out with a widget. They're going to release it with the Live Maps edition that's coming out in MMS. And what they will deliver is a summarization widget, a summary widget. And actually the top two ones, so these blue ones, are these new ones. And what you see is here counters that are collected by our management pack that we show as a summary. We hit configure. You actually pick the objects that you need. You pick the perf counters, and it will show you as a summary this information. Just to give you an idea, there's a real simple wizard to select the instances and select the perf counters. And then depending on state of those counters, these widgets can actually color yellow or red or stay as they are now. And again, giving you the option to create a dashboard, for instance, for like we're doing here for Oracle. So that's all good. Now, if we go back to the presentation, we've seen that we can get from component monitoring with OpsMgr 2012 SP1 to service monitoring, start visualizing that, but also have a fifth dimension to OM where we add a capacity perspective to the information we already have. And then we saw that we are really cross-platform. We have both the Unix, Linux, and we have vendor management packs, of course, to complement them for other application workloads. Now, what are other new items in Operations Manager 2012 SP1? Personally, I'm very excited about the Global Service Monitor feature, GSM. What we do is we leverage the Azure data centers to do what you could call outside-in monitoring. We can run the web tests that you create from the authoring section, and instead of picking an OM agent, we pick one of the Azure data centers, and it then starts doing the tests from outside in and giving the information back to your OM console. You can do that worldwide, so get a perspective from the West Coast, the East Coast, what have you. And GSM is actually available to licensed System Center customers with software assurance, so it's a free benefit for having software assurance. We now have support for dynamic access control, which is a Windows Server 2012 feature. Audit collection services being the framework within OM to do more or less security monitoring, collecting security events. So we now support Windows Server 2012 dynamic access control. As we talked APM, we now monitor Windows services built on .NET, which is a good thing. We can do monitoring of front-end components of SharePoint. And a neat new thing also is we can actually connect with TFS, TFS 2010, TFS 2012. And any alert we get from APM, we can then create as a bug in the project that's associated in TFS and get the developer insights in, hey, there's a problem and this is the information we collected. We can also convert events we're picking up with APM to IntelliTrace format so that developers have insights into what happened and maybe provide a code fix or a bug fix. Of course, one of the key things with SP1 is support for Windows Server 2012 and IIS 8. So even running the management server roles and all the other OM roles on Windows Server is supported, but also monitoring, of course, those platforms with the new management packs. And then we have a new 360 degrees .NET application monitoring dashboard. So SP1 is a big release, and you see that you can get to a great level of service monitoring with OM as part of the System Center suite. So with System Center 2012, it's really cloud on your terms. Whether or not you're a small shop, you're just using Windows Server, whether you're a bigger shop, like more mid-market, some servers, hundreds of servers, but System Center adds an extra layer of virtualization management, of monitoring, of maintaining your environment, all the way to being an enterprise and adopting all these self-service capabilities, orchestration, what have you. And on the orchestration piece, you'll see Pete around 4:30 giving you insights on how to automate things in your data center. So with that, I actually want to close off. I think everybody knows you can ask questions through Twitter, and there's a Q&A at the end where we'll try and answer all those questions. So again, thank you here for attending, and thank you virtual attendees also for attending and being part of this. Good.
Well done. All right, so thank you, Maarten, for that. Much appreciated. There's a bunch of stuff there that I hadn't even seen yet before, which was really cool to be able to see. So as our next group is coming up, as you've seen during the day here and the rest of it, in most cases I've had an opportunity to give you personal experiences that I've had talking with these people, meeting them over the years and working with them. Have not had the opportunity with the next crew that you're going to meet, so I did a little sit down with them and tried to understand kind of who I'm introducing and the rest of it. And I only got partway into the conversation because when they reached the point where and I won't tell you whether it was Paul or Sean that said this, that said they like surfing and long walks on the beach, I just thought it was time to kind of cut away from that conversation. That was you? All right, he's claiming it. He's claiming it in the back there, so there we go. So we'll be calling them up here in a couple of minutes. We got another giveaway that we want to do, but before that, first off, I wanted to call out Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. All right, so you have now been called out. I've seen the Twitter feeds. You have been named by location. So if you're still out there, you need to throw a tweet out there and let us know that you're still listening, still on board and everything. All right, so Amelia, where are we at with giveaways? We got another round of giveaways going?
We sure do, Cameron, and these are probably the best ones because they're Star Wars Lego kits.
Ooh,
so don't start a riot, everybody.
All right.
All right, so shall we try again, or do you have any questions prepared?
I would, actually, I'll throw that out because I know I'm going to get asked this on our next giveaway also. So if anybody wants to like throw in questions, and things that we could throw out to be able to do this, throw them in via Twitter. That would be very helpful because coming up with these on the fly is not exactly what I've been planning today. So why don't we try drawing a couple first? We got a lot of people in attendance. Maybe we'll get some success on the drawings again.
Sounds great. All right, the first number is 209143. 209143. Oh, okay.
Nada.
All right.
Hold on. We got one there? Yeah, do y'all know that they're in your badges and everything? Take a look in the back. Oh. That may have been something we should have mentioned early on.
Could have mentioned that.
Oops. Okay, so I never looked at mine.
Along.
Okay, so if anybody didn't know, check the other side of your badges. That's where the numbers are at. Very important. I was going to ask you, did we actually give them the other half of these? I was kind of curious about that. So, with that as a starting point here, great point out on that one. Let's try that again.
Okay, so we had 209143. We'll also do 209114. Yeah, we have a winner.
We have a winner. Congratulations. That's one. All right. Good help. Very good help.
We've got a couple. Okay. You can choose between these.
Yeah, hold on. We may have to hook you up with a prize or something for pointing that out because I didn't realize it.
Would you like one?
Me? I'd love one. So I think the guy over here who pointed that out should probably get one also.
Step
on
down.
up. Go on over. You're the one who pointed out what I wasn't pointing out. Step up.
All right, and then one more number. Okay.
Hey, Kevin Holman, sitting in the audience, please look at my badge and check the numbers on the back. That would be way cool.
I don't think we got tickets.
Dang it. Okay.
We're not allowed to win.
Oh, fine.
All right, 209-179.
209-179. We got one up here?
Woohoo!
All right. Amazing how much more success we're having with this now. That's awesome. All right. Is that our full set of giveaways now?
Yes, it is.
All right, and I do know we have several other giveaways you're going to see later. I think we have books, including the ability to be able to go ahead and get those signed by some of the authors who are here today. We have, in addition to that, I do believe a ticket to MMS.
Yes, we do. So stick around for that.
Yeah, that would be the big one. So that's very good stuff. So, so with that, I think we are actually a couple of minutes ahead of schedule. The guys want to come on up from Cyrus. I knew I was going to do that wrong. Cyrusson. Guys from Cyrusson want to come up now and get all set? Take your laptop.
Good job, Maarten.
Wow, you're kind of blinded up here.
Yeah, all right. Let's see.
What was that?
It's a cable.
What was it?
It was a network cable.
Oh, okay.
You don't need.
Hey, that's me.
Ready?
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name's Paul Sutton from Cyrusson, based in San Francisco. I know there's a global audience of people tuning in today. Throughout today's presentation, if you do have any questions, we can obviously make it interactive at the same time. We've got a nice big screen here for any tweets, so feel free to ask. Hashtag System Center Universe 2013. Before I start, I just want to say, contrary to public belief, I'm not Australian, nor am I the voice of the Geico insurance adverts, as most people seem to think I am. So today we're going to do a presentation about Service Manager, how you can turbocharge it with some value-add extensions. We're going to focus on Analyst Web Console and asset management. Before I actually go into more of a presentation, Sean, did you want to say a few words?
Absolutely appreciate it. My name is Sean Erickson. I'm absolutely excited to be amongst System Center like-minded folks. I've been in this space for about 12 years. Recently became a Microsoft System Center lover, but I've definitely worked for a lot of competitors. And Cameron is right. I do love to surf. I do like to take long walks on the beaches, but only because it relieves the cramps after I'm actually surfing. So there's a little story next to that. Now, we're going to keep this pretty light. We're going to keep this interactive. We're not going to death you by PowerPoint. We are going to do a lot of product presentation today. But a really, really quick agenda. We're going to talk about who Cyrusson is, where we come from, what we do as an organization, talk about our app store. We're going to dive deep into that. We're also going to talk about who we work with. We actually have a global presence. We have a lot of customers across the world, over a couple hundred customers in total. We're going to dig into our app store, talk about why we built an app store, the extensions we wrapped around Service Manager and System Center. It's going to be a great conversation. And then we're actually going to showcase our new asset management solution, which is a built-in plugin into Service Manager. That's a great complement to Configuration Manager and all that technical data you're getting from that particular piece of product. And last but not least, at the end of the presentation, we are going to give away a Surface. So we'll get the instructions on how to do that and enter a raffle that will be given away at reception. But we do have a Surface. It's the RT version with the keyboard. So stay tuned for that as well.
Okay, thanks, Sean. So Cyrusson, we are a registered partner with Microsoft. We're 100% focused on System Center. That's all we do. The bedrock of our business is development, and we build applications, as I mentioned, that really complement and enhance Service Manager. So we will be focusing on that in today's presentation. Outside of that, we provide training. So my background is I've worked in the service management industry for many years. I understand all the best practices such as ITIL, ITAM, ISO 20000. So we do offer training around best practices as well as Service Manager. And then also we're very big within the community, helping out our fellow colleagues. So
this is a great example of it, all of us together. We love it.
Yeah. And so obviously we are a part of Microsoft. Also, we just recently became part of the System Center Alliance, which we're very proud of. Also, my IT forum, I'm sure most people know Rod Trent over in the corner there.
The godfather.
Rod has been the godfather for the whole System Center community for years and years. And when I first started off my journey in System Center, I used my IT forum a lot. If you don't know, my IT forum is actually the world's largest System Center community, so it's a great source of information. For people that are using Service Manager and interested in the best practice side, then a couple of other good groups is the Help Desk Institute and Think IT Service Management Forum.
We can't forget System Center User Group for US. Shout out to Chris Ross out there, starting that up here, pioneering that. We partner with them, do a lot of presentations with them as well.
Okay, so quick snapshot on some of the customers we work with. We have a very global, diverse customer base touching virtually every continent.
Except Antarctica. We do not have any System Center customers
Travis
in Antarctica.
Travis, do we have any customers in Antarctica?
I don't think we do. Fair enough.
And yeah, so we actually have some customers here today, Accenture, GameStop, and Devon Energy. So we do work with some of the best in the industry. And here's a quick overview of the Saracen App Store. Now, typically, we have more time. We'd actually go through and actually show you these apps, but we only have about 25 minutes. So today, we're just going to touch on some of the key ones. So starting off from the top, how we actually try and package everything is there's a number of ways. You can actually buy our apps individual, or what we try to do to make it more budget friendly is we've made them into suites to make it a little bit more attractive. So the Essentials Management Suite, we have the My Active Work items. So if you are using Service Manager, this allows you to see everything, incident, problem change, service requests in a single view. Tier Watcher is an app that allows you to receive notifications for assignments, reassignments in an Outlook-style pop-up. And one of the great things about that is you don't actually need to have the console installed or running to actually have those notifications. Group Assign, this was actually the first app that we developed about 2 years ago. This is where you can have true support group membership. Auto Close, this is actually a free app that you can download right now. So if you are using Service Manager, you can have this automate your resolve incidents and work items into a closed state.
We actually have about 450 of these downloads out there already, so it's really exciting. We just measured that this morning.
Yep. Asset import, I'm not going to say too much. I've had strict orders from Sean.
Not steal my thunder. Not steal my
so
thunder.
I promise I won't mention this too much, but Sean will be covering this actually in a product demonstration. And then the Total Management Suite includes everything I just mentioned, as well as the Analyst Web Console, which is HTML5. You can have instant management, change requests, service requests, from any browser, any mobile device, and asset management.
So we're excited here today to kind of release our asset management solution. It's been out for a couple of months, but we figure we use this as a showcase to kind of show the world what are the most exciting apps we've brought to the actual App Store. It's really a reflection of our experience in the industry. I mentioned I've been in this space for about 12 years. And if we can go to the next slide, please. What we did as an organization is we really took a look at the space and we said to ourselves, we want to build an asset management solution that really complements the System Center story. And when we take a look at that, there's a basic principle called ITAM. It's a globally adopted process-oriented framework that says, how do we properly manage IT assets in our organization? Now, generally speaking, people immediately think of computers, and they lend to SCCM. That's first step into asset management. That's kind of a technical conversation. How do I manage information such as warranties, leases, and contracts around my hardware and software assets? How do I manage my service devices, my tablets, my network printers, my routers, my switches? How do I actually measure warranty starts and end dates and be proactive from a service level perspective and get that data from an asset management solution? Well, people generally start as spreadsheets. And there's nothing wrong with that. The only problem with spreadsheets is that it's a really no-control scenario. You have a bunch of spreadsheets, you're manually updating, it's constantly being pegged one way or another, you're losing data. It's a really, really messy story. Now, Microsoft came out with this kind of cool technology. SMS was its original name. Config Manager was what's now recently called Config Manager 2012.
What is Configuration Manager?
You're fired. Get off the stage.
That's awkward.
Config Manager 2012 was a great solution. Its ability to bring in technical data around workstations and servers is a really good start to the true asset management story. But it's not the only part of an asset management story. Every organization really has the ability. Can you build that slide out for me? There you go. Every organization really has a need to manage things outside of the workstation and server conversation. Printers, routers, switches, network devices, any type of asset that you want to track. Config Manager starts with workstations and servers, but again, that's the first start of it. Saracen Asset Management allows for you to track any hardware asset, any software asset, and be able to marry the organizational and financial information around that. Location information, purchase order information, cost center information, be able to manage warranty and lease information, and the ability to import that data via an external source of truth in an automated fashion. And we're going to show all that to you in our demonstration here. Now, because I really consider these types of presentations boring, what we thought we'd do is we make this a little interactive before we jump into the product presentation and do a little survey. So for the people out there in the webcast, we apologize we can't interact with you. Twitter's a little bit too slow for us, but survey question, Paul.
So we're going to do multiple choice. And
you're going to win a $20 Starbucks gift card. So you guys need to interact with us, OK?
So 800, is that the average size company in Dallas? 800 emails a day Travis receives from customers.
I'm about 100 of those.
You can't answer this, Travis. C, the lack of tracking assets increases total cost of ownership by $800 per user.
Whoa, 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 I'm going to say go. Slow down. Raise the hands.
And then finally, D, 800 minutes for the service desk to resolve the average incident.
1, 2, 3, go. That doesn't count. Here, this gentleman right here. What is it? C. OK, we got C. You are correct.
It's actually B.
Is it B? Oh, yeah, it probably is B. Yeah. Come on, grab it. Come on. Don't be shy. Come on. No worries.
That's valid too.
There you go, buddy.
OK, so I was reading this recent article from Gartner Research, and they were just talking about asset management in general. It was actually very relevant, very meaningful about total cost of ownership and reducing costs in IT. And they were saying that effectively having a lack of asset management increases the IT budget by around 7 to 10%, which if you break it down is about $800 per user. So some of the things they talked about, how you could actually improve that, the benefits of having asset management. Sean mentioned it earlier on as well. Things such as just getting to grips with your software, hardware contracts, reducing loss and theft. Most of the time when people leave an organization, they take their laptop and assets as well. And the other thing they mentioned too is if you look at asset management, it really complements not just SCCM, but also change management. And the #1 cause for incidents is actually a poor change management program, which ties into asset management. Now, due to time, we were going to do another survey. So I was going to glance over this one, but again, in the same article with Gartner, they were talking about software licensing, and they mentioned that most organizations are actually 10% over-license because everyone lives in fear of having the dreaded audit. Oh, there we go. Okay, so they're mentioning that most organizations are actually over-licensed by 10%, and also If you break down an IT budget, 25% is actually spent on software. So again, the more you understand what you have with your software, the more that you can actually reduce those costs. And again, some benefits, you can prevent audits, you can automate, and so if you actually understand what you have, you can start to really reduce those costs.
So we're going to go ahead and jump into the product presentation for our asset management solution. Now again, time is against us, so the challenge here is going to be able to show you as much as we can in the next 10, 15 minutes here. But with that, can we go ahead and share the screen? Everything's good? So when we built our asset management solution, we use ITAM as a best practice discipline. I'm not going to lie, we worked with a lot of competitors as well. We kind of took the best of breed of those competitors and threw them into our asset management solution. We thought that'd be the most effective way to bring to the market a really scalable enterprise solution that's valuable, affordable, and easy to use. Now, you'll notice here our asset management solution is completely tied into Service Manager. It sits snugly right in the configuration items tree. You don't really learn anything new. Right out of the box, it fits right into that ecosystem. And right off the get-go, you can see here how we've immediately expanded the conversation into the organizational financial aspects of asset management. We have the ability to bring in simple concepts such as cost centers, invoices, locations, organizational data, purchase order information. And we're able to use that data from external sources of truth, bring those in on intervals or one-time hits, and allow for you to take that organizational and financial information and wrap it around any one of your hardware assets or software assets. Those can be including things coming from SCCM, which we automatically integrate and federate inside the SCCMDB, or those can be things that you don't necessarily may track, like a router or a switch. So again, wrapping that organizational financial information is key part of this conversation. Now, we do have the ability to put together these building blocks, which is an important part of the story here. But the next important part of an asset management story is about the contract management. Now, most IT organizations manage contracts in a couple of different capacities. Those can be based upon lease information. Those can be based upon software support and maintenance contracts. Or those can be based upon warranty information. Now, I'm going to pick on the warranty conversation because that tends to be where people lie, but we do have the ability to do any type of contract management. Now, if I take a look at my warranty information here, we've done a couple of unique things that I consider a little clever as well. So you'll see here from a warranty perspective, I have 3 warranties. I have a warranty start date, I have a warranty end date, and then right next to it, we actually have a built-in measurable service level agreement that gives me immediately which machines, hardware assets are going to expire, are in terms of being okay in terms of a warranty. So warranty 001 is okay because it has 972 days left on its warranty. Warranty 002 is expired, it's maxed out. And warranty 003 has 3 days left, so we're in a warning state here. And this is very key because not only do we give you a visual cue around this, but more importantly, we stole some things from Travis's SCSM design, and we actually brought them into this from being built-in service level agreements. You'll notice here that we automatically have the ability, based upon the contract status, to tell you which warranties are going to be expiring soon, and automatically tell you which warranties have expired. Now, because it's a built-in service level agreement, you have the ability now to send automatic notifications based upon those status changes to your asset managers, to your desktop managers, to your people that manage your telecom devices, your network devices, and say, hey guys, this warranty is about to expire. You need to do something about it. And this is what we call that proactive asset management we discussed earlier. I actually get really geeked out about this particular feature as well. It's our preview pane app we have in our app store, but we also have the ability to interact with the console in a little bit unique way. So let's say I have a contract here, like this warranty contract, and I want to actually attach this warranty contract to this warranty. I have the ability to come down here to the attachments area, and all I got to do is, there it is, drag and drop that onto the warranty area, and now I've actually attached that warranty on the fly. Your asset managers will absolutely love this. No longer having to jump into a CI and attach and detach documents. Now that's all cool stuff, and that's really relating around organizational financial information. But what about the hardware and software assets themselves? We talked about complementing System Center. So System Center has the ability to give us data around workstations and servers. We absolutely do that. We have the ability to wrap that asset management story around that data. But you'll notice here right away, we have the ability to track any type of hardware asset. Those can be routers, those can be smartphones, those can be switches, those can be tablets, Surface tablets. Those can also be all those assets being discovered in the CMDB via SCCM. So we're now able to immediately expand that conversation and track any type of hardware asset. And that's pretty cool. I think that's a really, really nice feature to be able to track that data. But what I think is even better is the ability to build views and reports that let you be proactive in that conversation. So without our asset management solution, you can track computer name, serial number, asset tag, manufacturer, and model. With our asset management solution, you can expand that conversation and track different things that may relate to your business. Those can include cost information, hardware asset status, manufacturer, model, serial number, the physical location of an asset, the primary owner of that asset, the vendor of that asset, and the warranty start dates, end dates, and the purchase orders. Now this is just a small piece, but you can see here that by digging into your guys' organization and bringing that metadata into the system, we now have the ability to easily manage that across the hardware asset management story. Now again, we're built into the service manager architecture. This is a key part of our DNA. So if I wanted to quickly come in here and add a criteria such as warranty end date, I can simply come in here and say, show me everything that expired 2012. Oops, there it goes. And I'll see that here. I can highlight all of those. And then I can create a related incident or service request to actually kickstart a process you may have defined in your organization and associate that particular asset to that incident. So full federation back into your service manager implementation and completely going to be compliant with your guys' internal processes. All cool stuff. The other great thing about this is that SLA conversation exists here as well. So you'll see here I have warranties that I have assets that are associated with warranties that are already in an expired state. That's not only for workstations. You see I have tablets that are expired, switches that are expired, workstations that are expired. Immediately we have visibility into that asset management story in a very convenient way. This is where I would ask questions in an interactive session, but it's too tough right now. So we'll keep going, we'll keep going. The next big part of our story is software asset management. I actually love this part. When we designed this, we wanted to design this in its most simplest manner. And the way we designed this was from our implementation experience. We said to ourselves, we've probably done about 75 asset management implementations. What's the best way to make this work? How do we give an organization immediate visibility into what's owned versus what's installed and be proactive in that conversation? Well, at a snapshot, if I look at my software asset management node, you'll see I have 5 pieces of software. And immediately, I can see the software asset name, the version number, I have the manufacturer, the software asset status, whether it's approved or not, the purchase count, which is very key, but more importantly, the install count, the difference between that and that license status. So we'll pick on Acrobat Pro for a second. Acrobat Pro is an approved piece of software. We've purchased 25 of those. 11 are installed, and our available count is 14, so we're OK from a license perspective. iTunes is not approved. So we do want to track it, but it's not approved. What are you laughing at? So it's not approved, right? So we have a purchase count of 0, but SCCM is telling us that we have 13 installed, so we're in a negative state here. Now you can see here quickly from a dashboard perspective, we now have visibility from a software asset perspective to see software titles, purchase counts, and install counts. But what's even cooler is how we actually do this. Let me go ahead and pick on Acrobat Pro here. Now I'm not going to dig into this too deep. You can see a full deep dive at our booth or contact us, but a software asset has some very fundamental building blocks. They have things around organizational information, financial information, things you would expect. But more importantly, how do we actually aggregate that data out of SCCM into your asset management story? Well, forgetting our solution for a moment, let's talk about how different product vendors actually put stuff in add and remove programs. So Acrobat Pro is our example, right? So let's say Acrobat Pro in version 11.0 in add and remove programs looks like this. And then because they were bored, Acrobat decided to put a copyright symbol in the add and remove programs. Has anyone seen this, where they start changing the add and remove programs and it drives everyone absolutely insane? You can't normalize anything. And then Acrobat Pro, for the next version, just because they wanted to, decided to call it that way, right? It's a constant evolution, right? They just, for some reason, and sorry, Microsoft, you guys do it as well. Everyone does it. It's just, it is what it is, right? And this is what we call, say that again? Oh, yeah. Well, that's a registry thing too, but. So what we wanted to do here is we wanted to be able to normalize data on the fly. We we wanted to give you guys the ability to build variabilized patterns to be able to grab and aggregate data automatically and then be able to attach that to the actual software asset. So you'll notice here, I have the ability to define a software pattern called %acrobat%pro%. That grabs everything without an add and move programs. Then I also do a version pattern. So this captures all the major and minor versions around my software. So 11.1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. If I want to track any version of Acrobat Pro, I just go like that. And now I'm tracking everything. So very, very simple to adopt, very, very simple to understand. And our ability to then grab that data and show you all the related assets that have that piece of software installed, all the related software takes seconds. It immediately takes seconds. Now, I can jump into that a lot more deeper at our booth and in a presentation, but at a high level, that's kind of hardware asset management and software asset management. I have about 2 minutes, 3 minutes left, so I do want to jump into another important part of our asset management story, which is how do we actually get data into the system? Now, if you're familiar with Service Manager, this is a little bit difficult out of the box. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to make this very, very simple. So generally speaking, you have external sources of truth. You might have a fixed asset system that has POs pumping out to a UNC share you want to bring in, or you might be tracking your tablets on a spreadsheet and you want to bring that data all the way into SCSM immediately. So what we did is we built in a connector solution that lives right inside of SCSM that allows for you to bring data into the actual solution. So let's say we're actually setting this up and we want to bring in all the location information. So for System Center 2013, we're going to do a location import. Then we're going to pump that into a management pack, asset connectors. And then we're going to provide a location for this. This is going to be a hard path or a UNC share, which that one is. It's going to be sitting on my Service Manager server. What we're doing here then is we're saying, what do we want to import in? And we actually, on the fly, traverse the configuration items class, and we show you every single possibility to import into configuration items, including Cyrus and Asset Management. So if I go find the location node, I'll see that here. And then I'm going to choose my relationship type. That's all kind of boring, to be honest. This is kind of the cool stuff. So on the fly, we're going to take a look at the location class, and then we're going to show you every single attribute available to import into that location class. And this is key, right? There's no XML. There's no need to build workflows. None of that stuff. That's all gone. We now have the ability to say, here are the friendly names of the location, and here are the data types. And let's do some really quick CSV file header mapping. So we'll go ahead and choose location name for this. For my address line, we'll do address line number 1, address line number 2. I believe I have a city in here. I have a country in here. We have postal code. We didn't use zip because it's a global system, so postal code. We have the state in here, so on and so forth. Now, again, this is for locations, but think about a fixed asset system that can pump out POs, right? We have the ability to read different federated sources of truth, and on intervals, bring that data in. So let's say your fixed asset system is pumping out POs at 1 a.m. to a file share. So at 2 a.m., what we'll do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we'll read that file share and bring in the new POs. And again, no longer knowing XML, workflow stuff, which drives me insane even though I can do it. It's a really, really simple way to import data into the system. Now, that's kind of an overview of our asset management solution. If we kick it back over to the slides to finish up, we'd appreciate that.
So typically, we would spend more time showing the actual demonstration and more of the apps. If you are interested, obviously contact us. We can arrange something. So just a quick summary of the asset management solution. It is affordable. It's easy to use. It's a site license structure, so one product, one solution, one license. And it fully supports ITAM, ITIL, and Microsoft Operating Framework. Now, the slide here is the Analyst Web Console. You can do incident management, change management, and service requests.
It works on a Surface.
It works on the Surface.
We have an iPad up there, but it works on a Surface.
So this is just a quick screenshot. This is a screenshot of service requests. And My Active Work Items is also very popular. As I mentioned earlier on, if you do want to track all your work items, instant changes, problems, and service requests, you can in one view. So I think we're actually...
I actually want to stop real quick.
Yep.
We have, since we're in Texas, we have one of our guys in Austin, Newton Cunningham. I can't see you, but for, which one's camera? Whichever camera it is. People in that audience, give Newt hell. Give him a big hug, but give him a noogie as well. So I just want to give a call out to Newt.
And so we're getting to MMS in April, and we actually have some tickets. So if anyone wants a free ticket, please follow us at Team Saracen on Twitter, and we will be making some announcements on people. Also, for anyone that is interested in buying any of our apps, we are doing a System Center Universe special, 10% off, between now and the end of March.
Last but not least, we're giving away a Surface. We're going to give it at the beginning of the reception area. In everyone's bag, there's a little raffle ticket. So if you bring that raffle ticket to us, fill it out, rip it off, drop it off at our booth, we will give this away at the beginning of reception, so make sure to come for that as well. If you don't, and it's not claimed, it's coming home with me. Seriously.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
We really appreciate everyone's time, and thank you for your time.
Good job, guys. I'm not doing that again, man. Y'all, how do you? Saracen. There we go. There we go. All right. So first off, let me clarify a couple of things, and actually, I may ask Amelia to make sure that I've got this all proper as well. So there was some confusion, obviously, around drawings and things of that nature. So first off, I wanted to talk about the MMS badge. Okay. So what's going to happen with the MMS badge is we're going to have a snack table that's put up outside. And Amelia, I'm going to ask if you'll jump in if I'm misrepresenting any of this. And at that, we're going to have a fish bowl. Put in a business card. If you didn't bring a business card, grab one of the Catapult business cards, put your information on it, put it in the bowl, and we will be drawing from that bowl for the MMS badge, okay? Everybody cool with that? Any problems?
Just get it in there before the Q&A panel.
Before the Q&A panel, which occurs at what time again, Amelia?
5:30.
5:30.
You have until 5:29 to get those cards in.
Excellent. Until 5:29. All right. Let's see. Do we have another giveaway at this point, Amelia?
We do.
Oh, hold on one second. What's this? Ah, the clicker giveaway. You get the clicker. All right. Hold on. But over to Amelia.
On behalf of Microsoft Hardware, we'll do a drawing for a wedge mouse. From Bright Industries, we have Benson Wood.
He's right there. Excellent. All right.
From Mary Kay, we have Jacob Benke.
Where's Jacob? I know he was here. Is Jacob still here?
Okay. From Calvarian, we have Mark Ball.
All right. I see Calvarian coming over there right now.
Calvarian.
So, all right. See, I can pronounce their company. Sorry, man.
And the last Microsoft Wedge Touch goes to Marco Perez.
Marco Perez. Do we have Marco Perez out here? All right. Excellent. That's the third.
Thank you.
All right. So I'll give you a quick intro here before we get started. All right. So let me first off get a quick chance to be able to introduce Joey Snow. So we got to give him a huge round of applause even before he starts, and let me explain why.
Because I'm here.
There is that. Actually, there's a good reason why I'm saying that, because he's here. Joey was contacted how many days ago now?
2.
2 days ago. All right, so 2 days ago, he got the call from our presenter who was scheduled for this presentation, who had come down with the flu. And Joey was put on the spot and said, you want to come to Texas and do this? And I stepped up and is here for it today. So we very much want to appreciate the fact that he's here to be able to take over and run with this. So with that, I will step aside and let Joey take over.
Sure. Thanks, Cameron.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Really? That was lame. I know it's 3. You're in a food coma. Let's try this again. Hey, everybody. Hey, maybe everybody heard you. Shout out to everybody online, folks down in Houston, where I lived for 12 years, which is why I jumped on the case to come down here. Love coming back to Texas. Also shout out again to Ottawa, just because Sean's probably going to yell on screen. All right, so real quick, if you don't mind, switch over to my laptop here. I'll first have to plug it in. Okay. I love days when I come into the office and I get an email like this. Now, I know it's hard to read, but let me start it off. It says, hey, Joey, how's it going? Hope you had a great holiday and 2013 is off to a great start. How's the family? Immediately right there, bells and whistles start sounding in my head as an IT guy, right? Because you know something very bad is coming. And of course, in the next sentence, it starts. Over the last few months, we've been working with a contractor to bring in a new accounting system, and we're ready to bring it into production. Now that we're all ready to go, we'll need a few servers from IT in order to get moving. Our goal is to get this system fully deployed in the next week so we can be able to run our end-of-month reports. Am I that far off as far as this email in terms of reality? I see everybody in this room shaking their heads no, right? What we will require is a SQL server to host our data. We've been using one that the contractor gave us during testing. Oof. We also need a new server with at least 14 terabytes of storage for when we execute the end-of-month report build. The contractor highly suggests that the disks be duplicated and if possible spread out across multiple storage units. Can you let me know when this can be completed? We're in a rush. Thanks. You get these emails, don't we? Yes, we do. And when you see that, what's your initial reaction besides to either very quickly find a very tall place in the facility to try to jump from, right? Or the other thing is like the standard IT admin answer, no, right? Well, the reality is in today's world, our users have such extreme expectations from IT that we need to try to deliver these things, right? We need to try to be able to get these guys this solution. Now, could you do it in a week today? How many of you guys have 14 terabytes of storage just sitting around? Okay, a couple of you, right? How many of you guys then first have to go talk to the storage guys? That takes them like 3 weeks before they actually get anything done. If you're a storage guy, I apologize, but that's just the reality, right? Yeah, you're nodding your head over there. You're going, yeah, I'm the storage guy, and yeah, it takes me 3 weeks. 2.5 to go to the beach, and then, you know, a couple of days to fix it up. So to start off this project, what's the first thing you guys are probably going to want to do? Probably go buy a couple servers, right? Yeah, maybe you have a couple. If you went and bought a couple of them, that's going to take a couple weeks at least, unless you've got a really good relationship with your hardware vendor. Then, of course, you get the fun game of racking the server, finding the server that you have to unplug because your racks are completely full. Or even the funner part that I love, I absolutely love this. I love this when the vendors decide that they're going to change the type of power supply that comes in the system. So nothing in your switch room works with it, right? So now you got to call the electrician. Look, and then you got to rack it, and you got to run multiple NIC cards out so that this thing never goes down because it's accounting and that's the life of our business. I run multiple power cords. What I'm here to talk about today is another option. Now, I used a really, really extreme case here. And yes, I'm trying to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But see, I spent 15 years in your shoes, and I dealt with this stuff on a regular day-to-day basis. And this is kind of why I'm super excited about what I'm here to talk about, which, if we can flip over to my slides, is going to be this thing called Windows Azure. Who's heard of it? Okay, those of you with your hands up, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Come on, stay awake. Stay with me now. All right, how many of you don't think it's for you as an IT guy? It's only developer. Okay, so for those of you watching at home and didn't see the room, the majority of the hands went down. That's good. However, there's a few of you out there that still have your hands up going, yeah, it's not for me, it's only for a developer. That's not true. Because we have announced, just around the TechEd timeframe of last year, this thing that we call infrastructure as a service. Right? This essentially allows me to run virtual machines in the cloud. And what we're going to talk about today is how we can actually implement a solution that's going to meet the demands of my friend Veronica here and actually get something fairly close to what she's demanding up and running in just a few minutes. It can happen in minutes, not days, not weeks. We can actually get an infrastructure up and running. All right, so when we talk about infrastructure as a service, we talk about Windows Azure. First, let me kind of give you a quick backgrounder I'll give you a quick background on where we were with Windows Azure. When Windows Azure first came out, it was designed to run in what we call in cloud terms Platform as a Service, or PaaS, which means I write an application specifically designed to run in what we call stateless environment. In other words, I don't keep any state around. There's no data. There's none of this stuff. There's no VM state I got to save. If the app goes down, if we have to fail it over for any given reason, it's OK, it just picks up and it starts running again. And we kind of ran into a few little issues. For some reason, do I have developers in here? Because I don't want to insult anybody. Sometimes our developers like to run their applications so that everybody has to be an administrator on the machine, right? Yeah, I hear boos. I agree with you completely. That's not the way we do things anymore. That is so 1999, right? So we needed a way to do some things in admin mode. So we made some changes and we created an administrative mode, which allows us to run some scripts, to do a little warm-up action on whatever we're running, whatever service we're running in Platform as a Service. Then we ran into a couple of situations where those startup scripts take a really, really, really long time to get running, particularly if you have to install any components. How many people in the room are familiar with Channel 9? I hope to see a lot more hands up, particularly the Ed Show. Shameless self-promotion, right? The Ed Show is the IT Pro show on Channel 9. If you don't see it, we do it every week. Sometimes I'm on it. With Channel 9, it's great because we do these videos, we do these regular shows, and we have to encode those. And when we encode them across multiple formats, right? So you can listen to it as a podcast, you can watch it in high quality, you can watch it low quality on your little tiny device, however you want to do it. And that's all fine and dandy, because in a given week, we're probably producing 7 or 8 shows in a week. Pretty easy to encode. But when we go to an event, like say a tech ed, or a build, or PDC back in the day, we're there on site, we're live, we're broadcasting this stuff out live, and then we're taking every session and we're recording it and we're publishing it out to the internet. That's a lot of publishing that requires to be done. So we decided, hey, look, let's take advantage of the fact that right now the encoding is being run underneath some guy's desk, which is true, that's how it was being done originally, and let's leverage Azure, and let's move it up there. Well, one of the things that we do is we have a custom encoder that leverages a whole bunch of other Microsoft technologies under the hood. So we had to install those technologies. The problem is that any time we want to scale up, like if we go to tech ed, we want to very quickly scale up so we have a whole bunch of encoders instead of one underneath the guy's desk so that we can service all these requests. It took an awful long time. So the Windows Azure team created what we call VM role, which enables us to have our applications running inside of a virtual machine that we then upload to Microsoft and it runs. And it's great because I can have all these components running and everything else. But see, we're still caught in this world of statelessness. In other words, I can't have data residing on that because if it ever fails over, falls over, whatever, we need to move it, right? Or I decide to scale it down and boom back up. There's nothing there. There's no stateful data to keep around. Introducing now, when we come into the spring release, which was in June, I guess technically still spring, we introduce Windows Azure Virtual Machines. Now this is truly infrastructure as a service. In other words, this is designed for you to either create or upload a virtual machine up into Windows Azure that has your configuration in it and that it is stateful. In other words, if we need 14 terabytes of storage for my accounting team, that storage is going to remain there, all right? So we took a serious look at that, and we introduced infrastructure as a service. Now, I want to kind of go through this. I've got 32 slides. Who wants to see all 32 slides and have me talk to them for the next 49 minutes and 55 seconds? I saw one hand. Where, really? Really? Oh, he's an MVP, that's why. I don't want to do that. I've got some slides. You can download the slides. We can reference some of the slides a little bit later on. As a matter of fact, we've got a lot of that slideware kind of stuff in our Windows Azure Platform Training Kit, along with all the detailed notes and demos and labs and stuff that you can do. If you just go out to your favorite search engine, Bing. Okay, that joke kind of fell a little flat. I tried again. If you go out to your favorite search engine, Bing, yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for the support. Just go and look up Windows Azure Platform Training Kit. We also have some great courses on the Microsoft Virtual Academy. Sign up, take some of those to learn a lot more. But I'm going to go through this presentation in kind of a how do we do this kind of thing. have I established the why pretty good with my crazy email here? Kind of understand why infrastructure as a service would be a good thing, so let's respond to Veronica here. All right, let's flip over to my, onto my machine here. And you'll see first the Windows Azure portal. And this is the new portal. And this portal is built on HTML5, which means that I can access the portal on all sorts of devices. That's the first thing I really like about the new portal. You'll see here on the left-hand side that I've got virtual machines, right? These are the new Windows Azure virtual machines, not the old VM role. So I've got several virtual machines that I have running inside of my environment here. Now, if I wanted to create a brand new server leveraging some resources, I don't have to go rack a bunch of servers. I'm going to go out to Windows Azure, and I'm going to say, I want a Windows Server 2012 box. And I'd like you to build that now. So let me go ahead. I'll zoom in through this. I'm going to choose New. Let me scroll up. I'm going to go Virtual Machine, and from the gallery. Now, this is the first one of the first slides that we talk about. We talk about the available images. I'll zoom out again so we can kind of see them better. Yeah, everybody see that? We've got BizTalk. We've got a SQL Server evaluation image. We've got Server 2008 R2SP1. We've got Windows Server. And no, your eyes are not deceiving you. We've got Linux. So I can very, very quickly provision a server. Now, I'm going to pick what Mark Rusinovich calls his most favorite operating system in Windows Azure, which is Windows Server 2012. And imagine that Mark, that happens to be his favorite. I want to create a new virtual machine. Now, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to give it a name. All right, easy enough. Can we all see that? Do I need to zoom in? Let's give it a name. So let's call this SEUS 2012. Cool. And then I give it a username and a password, so let's do that. Now, the next thing that I've got to do is I get to choose my size. Now, the thing about infrastructure as a service in Windows Azure, it's a cloud-based service, and basically what it means is I only pay for what I use when I use it. And I have the control and flexibility to determine how much I pay in terms of selecting the size. So you'll see that we've got extra small, which is a shared core, meaning you're going to share that with other people. Great for testing. Don't recommend it at all for production. We've got small, which is 1 core, just a little bit shy of 2 gig. Medium, 2 cores, 3.5 gig of memory. Large, 4 cores with 7 gig of memory. And extra large with 8 cores and 14 gig of memory. I'm just going to go ahead and for this particular demonstration, I'm just going to go ahead and choose small. Zoom back out so we can see the rest of the wizard. I'm going to click Next. Now, the next thing that we have to do is we have to decide what the DNS name is, and this is for what we call a cloud service. So, terminology check. In Windows Azure, we have roles, instances, and cloud services. So, a role could be a Windows Azure virtual machine. It could be a web role. It can be a worker role. Or we actually still have the old VM role available. So you choose one of those dependent upon what you're doing, right? And if I need a web role, it's basically a PaaS offering of a web server. A worker role is where a worker role where I would put some specific .NET code to go run an application in, right? And virtual machine role. With roles, we also have instances, which happens to be the number of roles. 1 being the lowest, 2 being the lowest you can have and still have us give SLA around that. Obviously, 1 instance you can't really comply in SLA around, you need 2, right? And then we have, so I've got roles, I've got instances, now we've got cloud services. And what cloud services are kind of a collection of roles and instances. There's kind of a security and networking boundary. In the context of Windows Azure virtual machines, a virtual machine when it's singular, in other words, I only have 1 VM running in there, that's just a Windows Azure virtual machine. We do define a cloud service name around it, but it's not really, and I'll show this in the portal in just a second, it's not really truly, if you click the cloud services tab, it's not there. When we add a second virtual machine to the cloud service, a bunch of cool stuff happens. So first of all, it ends up in the Cloud Services tab, which is awesome. But the next thing it does is it actually wires up so that all the virtual machines that are running inside of a cloud service can talk to each other. Networking. DNS, right? I'll get to DNS in a minute. We've got a couple different ways to bring it, but they can talk to each other. They're all wired up. We can talk to each other. So in this one, CU 2013. Did it take it? Yeah, it took it. So I've got my DNS name. Let's do some zoom it here so everybody can see. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a storage account. In a storage account, I can have multiple storage accounts. This is basically where I'm going to put this VHD, because it's going to create a VHD, and all the associated data disks with it. So I can choose a storage account. I can choose to use an automatically generated one, or in my case, I actually have a storage account that I have specifically created. I actually have a whole bunch of them. You can see one of the automatically created ones, which is down at the bottom. But you'll see here that I have this JSVM store. And aptly named because that's where I store all my VMs. The next thing that we choose is what region we want this deployed in, or an affinity group, or virtual network. And I'll get to some of those terms here in just a minute. Let's get this server deployed so that Veronica can get something moving here. I'm just going to go ahead and deploy this out to the West US. Because as a Seattle guy, I'm just going to put it there. And then I have the ability to put in an availability set. That's some more stuff that we're going to get to here in just a minute. I click the checkbox, and now what's actually happening is that we're going out and we're carving off basically a server for you, right? We're actually going and giving you some compute, we're giving you some network, and we're giving you some storage. And then we're going to deploy our pre-baked image of Windows Server 2012 into that virtual machine and spin it up for you. Now, normally, this takes somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, so we're just going to let this guy go. Is 5 or 10 minutes too long? It's funny, I've had some meetings with some customers that are like, man, it's just way too slow. It takes, 10 minutes sometimes, even up to, and this was early in the days, 15 minutes. That's way too long to provision a server. So me being the nice guy that I am, I said, so how do you do it on premises? How long does that take you? And he's like, yeah, never mind. Okay? I'll take 5 or 10 minutes wait to provision a brand new server. So we have these base images, and these images are Windows Server 2012, SQL, evaluation on top of Server 2008 R2, the BizTalk stuff that you saw there. Those are images. Those are pre-baked things that we've given you guys to automatically fire up a machine. But see, in my shops, when I worked in IT, we had the Gold Master Server image. Anybody have those, Gold Master Server image? You spend so much time creating those, I want to use them too. All right? It's awesome if your Gold Master Server image is in a VHD file, you're virtualizing, because you can simply take that image, upload it into Windows Azure, and now all of the servers that you build, instead of choosing the Windows Server 2012 one, you get to choose your own custom baked image. It has to be sysprepped, okay? But you can have all of your agent software in there, all of your antivirus, anti-malware stuff, all of the little back doors that you guys as the administrators have. I got you there. I know they're there, right? So I don't always have to rely on this base Microsoft image, but it's pretty quick and easy for me to use this one here. The other cool thing that I want to talk about as far as OS images are concerned is your ability to create that Gold Master image up in the cloud by first starting this process. Then what you can do is you can actually upload a disk, which is simply a VHD. Do we all know how to create a VHD file inside of Windows? Use Disk Manager, create a VHD, mount that sucker up, put all of your install files, all of your custom MSIs and everything else in there, your unattended files, whatever you've got in there. You can take that VHD and very easily upload that VHD and attach it as a separate disk. It's really, really simple to do. And then you can have all of your installs and you can build your gold image instead of having to build it on premises and then wait for forever as it uploads that 14 terabyte Gold Master image. I'm being sarcastic there, obviously. But instead of having to wait for your Gold Master image, you can build one that you leverage up here inside of Windows Azure. So those are images. We have that terminology known as disks, which I mentioned, which is I can give a virtual machine disks. It can be a VHD that I've given Windows Azure, or in this case, of Veronica, and she wants 14 terabytes of disk, I can create those disks and attach them to a server, and it's basically like me going up to a server, grabbing a physical disk and sticking it in. Let me give you a demonstration. I have a server that's already running. So I'm going to connect to it. Everybody saw that what I did there. I just clicked connect inside of my Windows Azure virtual machine. And it's going to give me an RDP file that I can open up. When we deploy this, we automatically open up RDP access through what's called an endpoint. So I've got access, and when I created this image, you remember when I was going through the wizard, I gave it a password, right? So now that's my password that I can access via RDP. And we're going to go into this server. One of the other things that I did when I did this deployment is I gave it 16 1 terabyte data disks. Images or OSs, or images that you provide. Disks can be a VHD that you give us, or it can be empty and blank. Very clear there? Differences between the two? All right? You can have a disk size up to 1 terabyte. All right? We're going to wait for Windows Server. This is the first time I think I've logged into this box, so it's going to take a second to come up. 1 terabyte is the max size of any individual given disk. You can have up to 16 disks on any given virtual machine deployment as long as that's extra large, and it scales down, and I've got a table in my slide deck that shows you exactly how many disks that you can assign to each of the various sizes. We all good there? 1 terabyte max size, 16 tops in terms of an extra large VM. Now, I'm here in Server Manager inside of Server 2012. Now what I want to do is I'm going to show you how, since I've added these 16 1 terabyte disks, I'm going to show you how, as soon as Server Manager decides to talk to me here, there we go. I'm going to show you how simple and easy this is using the skill set that you have today. This is the great thing I love about Azure Infrastructure as a Service. You only have to know a few terminology things and a few little caveats, but everything else leverages the stuff that you do today as a server guy. Right? The same tools that I use, Server Manager, Computer Management. How do I monitor these guys? Anybody, yell it out. How do I monitor a server running in Azure? OpsMan, SCOM. Why? Because it's just a bloody Windows server. That's it. Right? That's how you monitor it. All right, so if I walked up and physically put in 16 different individual drives, I click Device Manager instead of Disk Management. I need my eyes checked. If I put all those in, what I would see here, as long as I connected to the right virtual machine, which I didn't. See, I knew I was bound to screw something up. That's not it. There it is. Like I said, I need my eyes checked. Actually, it's because I'm running at this resolution here. I go into disk management, and they pop off as, they come up and they say, you've got to initialize these disks. Have you ever seen that before? Then once we initialize these disks, we decide what we're going to do with them. We're going to put them in a stripe set. How are we going to do it? And then we format them. It's exactly the same thing here, but they're just a bunch of VHDs. Okay, so this is nothing new. Infrastructure as a Service has been around for a while. But let me tell you the one thing I absolutely love about our solution, besides the fact that I work at Microsoft and supposed to say these things, but these are just VHDs. These VHDs can be brought back down. In other words, you don't want to run it in Windows Azure anymore, or you've retired that service and I want to have a copy of it running on premises, including all of that data that we've stored in those 16 1 terabyte drives. All you have to do is connect up and download it. There's a great third-party product called Cloud Explorer. Just basically go in, you give it the storage key, you can go in, you can grab them, you can download them. as long as the VMs aren't running, right? Got to stop the VM, download them all. Import them right into Hyper-V, you're good to go. That's a big difference than some of the other solutions that are out there. It's not a roach motel. And that's super important, right? Because as people start dipping their toes into this cloud thing, you can feel confident because you can get your stuff out. Woo! This time is flying by, particularly as we're waiting for screens to refresh. All right. But, all right, I've just installed a bunch of disks. Has anybody seen this screen before? Anyone at all? Anyone? Bueller? Something DOO economics? I told you I won't let you sleep in my session. Does not work. All right, let's initialize all these disks. And we're going to let that go ahead and run. And you'll see there are all my disks coming up. They're all initialized. So now I have a whole bunch of disks and nothing there. So what do I want to do? Should we stripe these guys? Yeah, let's stripe them. Let's create a new stripe volume. Let's go through the wizard. Let's add those guys there. Go ahead and create it. Let's give it the drive F. Why not? Format it. Let's call it data volume. I could perform a long format and make you guys sit and wait for it to happen. Anybody down for that? All right, so we're going to convert those guys from basic to dynamic to stripe, and we're just going to let this guy go. Pretty cool, pretty easy, right? Like this, yeah? So far, so good, right? I've just added a whole bunch of storage into these disks. All right, while this guy sits and chugs along, let's go back out into the portal and give you some more of these little tidbits of Azure-specific knowledge that you need to know. Because I think I've proven the case that for the most part, you guys can do all the things that you're used to doing today. So let's go through and talk a little bit about availability. This is a big thing, availability. You want your stuff running, yes? Yes, users want their stuff running. I demand that I have access to Windows Azure at 30,000 feet as I'm on an airplane coming over here so that I can build demos. It worked too. Apart from the guy next to me who was trying to stream Netflix the entire time, and I just kind of kept hitting him. Stop it. Taking all my bandwidth. Availability. First of all, let's talk about availability from the disks. Do you remember how I talked about Veronica's request that 16 terabytes of disk space be spanned across things in case one thing falls down? We do the same thing. As a matter of fact, we keep 3 copies of your disks. That's your VHD for your OS and all of your data disks. Automatically, 3 copies. So if for some reason the storage on the rack inside of our data center goes down and something happens, we just move it. It's up to date. Okay? We just move it. We just say, oh, that one's down. Let's move it over here. We do the same thing with your Windows Azure virtual machines. Okay? Now, this is not a cluster, right? This is a just in case the entire West Coast falls into the ocean kind of a scenario, right? We lose a data center. We can move it. Because we keep 3 copies inside of a data center, so if we lose a rack, we keep 3 copies inside that data center, but we also keep a copy in other data centers. You don't have to do a thing. You don't have to pay for that. We do that to ensure your availability, right? So keeping copies of your disk, we keep copies of your virtual machines. We span them across multiple clusters. However, there are some things that you control. We have what is called a fault domain. A fault domain is something that we do in Windows Azure that says we're going to make sure that if you have 2 VMs running inside of a cloud service, that those VMs don't sit on the same piece of hardware. So that if Johnny the junior admin decides to go playing chair hockey in one of our data centers, rips out the back of the cables, true experience, I actually visited a client site that happened, that your entire stuff isn't down. That's a fault domain. We take care of that. But see, we have this thing called availability that a lot of us like to deal with. Our favorite day of the month, Patch Tuesday, right? We love Patch Tuesday. Yeah. No. We want to make sure that when any updates need to occur, and by updates, they're not the kind of updates that we deal with on managing inside of that virtual machine. But underneath Azure, the reality is that underneath Azure is running on Windows Server. And the Azure guys have to do updates. And they have to update things. We do have a 99.9-ish%, 95 I think is what it is. I'd have to look at my slide. Fail on Joey's part. SLA when you've got cloud service with multiple VMs running in it. If you only have one, you don't fall under the SLA. Thing to note. When we have to make those updates, we have you guys create what's called an update domain, which means what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that SQL Server 1 and SQL Server 2, which are mirrored of each other, one is an upgrade domain 1, one's an upgrade domain 2. Why do I do that? So that 1 and 2 are not down at the same time. And I do that through the creation process, through creating those, what I showed you, which was those affinity groups. So fault domain, we're in charge of. Upgrade domains, affinity groups, you're in charge of. You decide where the best fit for your resources are. Maybe you want to have compute resources located all over the globe, but your database, you want it to reside in one specific location, or you want it to reside on your on-premise data center. You're in complete control and flexibility of that. I talked about connecting to your data center, so let's talk about networks a little bit here. Now, I mentioned that when we put two virtual machines inside of a cloud service, so let me show you this. Let's go in here. I'll give you an example. I've got this, let's try, that looks like, we've got this guy here, this SCU Linux box here that's running. And this guy here says it's a member of scuniverse13.cloudapp.net. Let me zoom in so you can see that, right? We all good with that? See that? Trying to draw, won't let me. There we go. Wow. Joey's having a problem with Zoom it. Okay. If I go back in to my cloud services tab, so you see I've got virtual machines here. I can go in and look at cloud services. You'll see there's that SC Universe 13. But if I go back and look at my other virtual machines, even ones that aren't running, that only have one instance running, like this cool one here, that's SCU 2013, but that doesn't actually exist inside of my cloud services because it's only got that one VM running. So when I have those two VMs running inside there, they're actually connected. Now let me show you this cloud service, this SC Universe cloud service. You'll see here inside of this, I've got my instances, right? I've got my server 2012, which is that 16 terabyte box that we've got, and I've also got a Unix box. And I have done nothing as far as networking. To be open and honest with you here, I'm not going to blow up by showing you the PowerShell script I use. I'll show that later. All I did two things. Created a new image using my wizard, and then I added 16 disks. That's all I did from an Azure perspective. And then I did a new deployment. So if I want to deploy a VM to an existing VM set to create a cloud service, it's really simple. Let's go back through here again and show you my wizard. So we'll go new, virtual machine from gallery. Let's choose Unix this time. Anybody have a particular flavor they want? Let's do SUSE. Good. Right? Give it a new name. My SCU. We'll give it a small size as well. Now, here I gave it a DNS name as if I was going to create another cloud service. If I want this to join something that is already deployed, I click Connect to Existing Virtual Machine. And you'll see here are my cloud services that I could deploy this to that's going to wire it all up. So if I want to add this into the My Server 2012 cloud service, I select that. I can choose my storage account. It's going to automatically go into the West region as far as affinity because that's where my first one was. And if the two have to be connected, they're going to reside into the same place, right? Cloud service residing in the same data center, so it's going to go there. Here is where I can choose my availability sets. That's where I choose those update domains. That's where I choose, okay, this server and this server has to be part of this availability set, this server and this server has to be part of this availability set, so that you don't take down my entire infrastructure anytime you need to do an update. we're not going to choose one, and we're going to go ahead and deploy that. Now, what's happening is that's deployed out. We have DNS running already inside of that cloud service, so you don't have to do a thing. It automatically knows that if I connect to it, if I wanted to ping my server 2012, it would actually resolve it. Well, what happens if I want to bring in my own custom DNS to deploy Active Directory? You can absolutely do that. You can bring your own DNS so that you're not reliant upon our stuff. But what I love about this is if I go to one that's already existing, so let's see, SC Universe, so this is going to be, let's go to this guy here. If I want to connect into this guy, just to prove a case, I've done nothing, done absolutely nothing, just did a deployment as you saw. I'm going to open PuTTY. And I laugh at that every time because of Seinfeld, but maybe that's just me, right? Now I'm cheating by copying and pasting because my typing skills when I'm on stage just degrade as if they weren't bad enough. Y'all with me so far? Yeah. For the people on the webcast, there were like 6 guys that shouted yes. Now I'm going to go back here, and it's my server 2012. So I'm going to type ping. OK, let me zoom in so you can see it. You'll see that it's resolved the IP address, but it's not responding to ping. Why not? Anybody? Why won't it respond? It can resolve it. Why won't it see it? Server's running. It's online. Firewall, because it's a server 2012 box, right? OK, let's fix that. I'm going to zoom back out. Let's go to my server 2012, which I'm already connected into. Those disks, that disk stripe, by the way, it's finished. I've got my big data volume. So Veronica should be happy. What are we at now? We're at probably 20 minutes into my presentation, and that's all up and running for her. Can you do that at home? Sure you can. Azure. Right? Let's go to my firewall. Is it an inbound or an outbound rule? I just gave it away. Never mind. Don't answer that question. All right. There's already a rule here. Right? File and printer sharing, echo request, ICMP-v4, right? We just have to enable that rule. I've enabled that rule. Let's go back to PuTTY. And now there you see. Yeah? Responding and answering and talking. I did nothing. No DNS mappings, none of that stuff. Automatically assigned. IP address, DNS, everything else. But you can bring your own, as I mentioned. Really kind of cool. That's really cool networking stuff. All right? That's all fine and dandy, Joey. It's all running in the cloud. But see, I want my user data in my data centers. I've got compliance issues. That SQL data cannot, my accounting data cannot leave. Right? Maybe some governmental issue. But I want to leverage these big servers up here to do all the processing and then spit the data back down. We can do that through what's known as Windows Azure Virtual Networks. Anybody manage Cisco devices? Anybody at all? Really? There's like no hands. A PIX 5505, pretty common thing that we see out there. Do you guys know how to create VPN connections using your PIX? The guys who are in here, they're like, yeah. That's all you have to do for this. In fact, we give you the script to configure a VPN connection between your on-premise data center and Windows Azure so that you can wire it up and connect it. Which means that before I start any of this activity here like I was doing for Veronica, if I wanted to, all I had to do was create that VPN connection, deploy a virtual machine out there, install Active Directory as a domain controller. It could be standalone. It could be another domain controller as part of your domain that just sits up in Active Directory. I can deploy DNS to that domain controller and basically expand my corporate network out into the Windows Azure data center. It's really simple. And once you get AD installed, we can install a SQL server. Once you get everything in there, if it's a server, you've got group policy deploying to servers. Group policy runs against the servers in the cloud because you've extended that network up there. So nothing's different. All the things that you do on a day in and day out basis. See, here's the thing that kills me. Everybody here, or I shouldn't say everybody, I hear a lot of feedback that says the cloud is going to kill my job as an IT guy. That's not reality, right? It changes your job as an IT guy. How many of you guys just absolutely love racking servers and replacing backplanes and hard drives when they fall and replacing network cables and getting underneath the raised floor where there's who knows what underneath there, working in 42-degree Arctic weather inside of those switch rooms, right? That aspect of IT was probably really, really cool the first 5 months you were there. But then you've started moving along, right? I know you guys in here are like hardcore like systems management, that whole kind of thing. You're taking it to the next level. This is taking IT to the next level because we can now respond to those crazy demands of Veronica and get those servers to her within a week. Now, I don't know that I would necessarily want to go into a full production run with a week and no testing. Apparently, the contractor thinks that's just fine. He's probably a dev guy. I have to take shots at the dev guy. I work in an organization called Developer and Platform Evangelism. So like at corporate, there's like 4 of us IT guys, and then there's like 70 dev guys. So I'm like surrounded by them. I see code, I get a rash. It's one of those things. I have to make fun of them. So I can very quickly respond to this stuff, and I only have to pay for what I use. How many times have you been approached by a developer that says, we've got this app that we want to bring out? And they built it in like Access 2.0, and it was only to be used for 4 users. And then you wake up a year down the line, and it is a mission-critical application for the entire company. You're laughing, but seriously, we deal with that on a regular basis. How many of you guys have developers that build things that think this is going to be the next mission-critical application for the entire company? And they deploy it out, and within 1 week, all of the users reject it, and you don't want it anymore. And you just went out and bought 16 servers and a brand new rack and brought in the electricians to run power for it, and you're not even using this app anymore. Well, you get your investment back on those servers? Maybe eventually when we take them over to build a Minecraft server. But we don't get it back immediately. The great thing about this is if we want to go out and give a developer an environment to go in that looks just like my enterprise, it's got AD, it's got everything else, and then go in and dabble in it, get it out there, get it out for user acceptance testing. Yeah, developer doing that. No, seriously, we did user acceptance testing in a lot of my jobs. Get it out there, the users get it, and they're like, this stinks. Cool, no problem. Shut down the service and then delete it. It has to be deleted for you not to be charged by it. Why? Because when we dedicate resources to you, you need to pay for it. So when you deploy a virtual machine, whether it's running or not, if it's in a stop state, we have still carved out the chunk of resources for you guys to use. So that's why you have to delete it. Well, what about all of that data that we had inside of that VHD during that test? We want that data back. That's valuable. Cool, no problem. I told you before you can use this nifty tool called Cloud Explorer. So you'll see here I'm connected into my storage count. Right? It's really easy to do. You'll see there's my JSVM store. There's a folder called VHD. Look at all those VHDs. You see all those individual 1 terabyte VHDs? That's part of that 1 terabyte stripe that we just built and set up. I'm done with them. All I have to do, right-click, download. I can download it, import it in. I can open it up inside of disk management and go grab all the data out of it. Pretty cool. All right, so we've talked about images, the fact that you can bring your own image. You could build your own custom image, or you can use one of ours. There's some flexibility there. We talked about storage. We talked about how we replicate your storage across multiple places into the data center and across other data centers. We talked about the differences between disks and images, right? Image is an OS thing, a disk has data. Pretty simple to deal with there. We talked about cloud services. We talked about roles. We've talked about instances. Is there anything here that's really, really super hard and has your brain boggled? And it's okay to raise your hand because that's what we're here to do is learn. We all pretty good with this? Yeah, you guys have just learned like Azure 101. right? This is all still pretty simple. We talked about fault domains and update domains. We talked about DNS. But see, there's another subject along the lines of networking that I want to talk about, and that has to deal with endpoints. When you deploy machines inside of a cloud service, they can talk to each other just fine. You saw that. I showed you ping. I had to open up the Windows firewall just because it's Windows, and we secured that ICMP thing down. But what if I want to access it? Like RDP, we already punch a hole through our Azure firewalls to talk to this. That's the only thing that we open up. What happens if I have maybe a web server? I want to open up port 80. Or I'll give you a true scenario of this. I get this a lot of times. Joey, you work at Microsoft. You guys have everything that's cool. You guys can just have servers at a whim. It's so not true. We develop training kits. Who in here has been to an IT camp yet? Really? I see like 2 hands. IT camps, they're doing them all over the US. They're really awesome. Our field evangelists, the guys here, like John Weston will come through. We'll talk about server. We're going to talk about Windows 8. Talk about Azure, talk about all sorts of stuff. They're awesome events, very interactive. We've got hands-on components of them. Check them out. That content that is delivered by our 70-plus field evangelists is built by the 4 of us guys at corporate. Well, I've got a bunch of content. As a matter of fact, I had 90 gigabytes worth of content that we got around Windows Server 2012 that had to be distributed to the field over the Labor Day weekend. So we thought, no problem. We've got this awesome file server sitting in our data center that's running on hardware that's like 9 years old. It's okay, it'll work. So we copied it all there, and then all the guys from all around the world started trying to access it. And like some of them were calling me back and saying, yeah, I know I don't always trust the amount of time left in a file copy from Windows, but it's telling me there's 22 days. It's probably pretty accurate because I'm running Windows 8. 22 days is not acceptable. So, and this is Labor Day weekend. I'm supposed to not be dealing with this stuff. It's a weekend, right? No, I work in IT. It doesn't matter if it's a weekend, even at Microsoft, even as an evangelist. So my solution was, okay, I know IIS really well, and I know how to build an FTP server in IIS. So I stood up an IIS server in each one of the major regions, right? Put one up in Europe, put one up in Asia, put a couple up here in the United States. Because if you take a look at my cloud services, you'll actually see this because I'm responsible. It's not part of my individual account, but somebody has delegated me access to these. You'll see that there's that North America one. There's a Southeast Asia one, right? I'll zoom in for you. These are all FTP servers. So I stood up all these FTP servers. I went in, added the role, configured it, added a terabyte hard disk, right? And then I copied the data up to it, and then I opened up FTP. Now, those of you who know FTP, what ports do I have to open up for this to run? Anyone? You weren't expecting to get a Networking Essentials quiz, were you? 21, that's one of them. There's more. 20 and 21. How many of you guys ever used something like FileZilla, where you can have multiple connections, right? Can have this stateful FTP. Well, now you have to open up a whole bunch of other ports. Inside of Windows Azure, when I first deployed those, even though I had IIS running with the FTP service and an FTP server there, I couldn't access it. That's because we blocked those down. So if you take a look at one of these, we have these things known as endpoints. That's really tough to see just because the number of them. But you'll see that I opened up port 20 and 21, and then I've added up all of these other ports. So we do that stateful FTP thing so that I can have users connecting to 10 different ports. And I've just basically punched holes through the Windows Azure firewall. I can actually give it a public port and a private port. They don't have to match. In other words, if I want to open port 80 but not have it so everybody around the world can see my port 80s open, I can say open port 80 here and port 7014 over here. So you have to punch those endpoints through so that the outside world can talk to your VM. The only thing that we open up is the ability for RDP access, or in the case of Unix, we do open up port 23 as well, or in this case the SSH port, which was 55394, I think is what it was on the last one. So I can go in and manage it. That's it. One management port. Everything else is up to you. But then there's that Windows firewall thing again. you have to make sure that you also open up what you need to open up on the Windows firewall side. Okay, so endpoints, basically a way for me to get in there. Now we can also do load balancing and load balance endpoints, right? So this would be the case of if I had 3 FTP servers and I want to do load balancing. I can load balance those endpoints in there. I can also use endpoints for monitoring, right? Open up an endpoint and then have a utility or something checking that endpoint to make sure that it's up and running, right? And if it's not, flip over. Okay, so I can have port monitoring, basically, is essentially what's going on there. All right, that about covers the networking aspects of Windows Azure. Built-in DNS inside of a cloud service, bring your own DNS otherwise. You can do Active Directory. You can do SharePoint. You can do SQL Server inside of Windows Azure virtual machines. Those are core workloads that are supported. Did I mention Active Directory? I love Active Directory. I've been a junkie for that thing since it came out. I know, a little bit crazy, right? Particularly when you're dealing with 65 separate worldwide branch offices and replication and all the problems that can exist when you don't configure it the right way. Yeah, did it, right? Love that stuff. So let's go back to my email. I didn't deploy SQL Server here because I'm not a SQL guy, per se. I could just deploy it and then let my DBA go access it. But I did deploy a server with 14 terabytes of storage. And did I have to call the storage team and go build a whole new SAN so that that stuff is replicated out so if something happens, the data's still there? No, it's automatic. Happened automatically. Did I have to go and configure a whole bunch of crazy networking stuff? No. Didn't even have to do DNS because it's already there. Or I could have chosen to extend via Windows Azure Virtual Networks and created a VPN. And if you know how to create a VPN, and it is actually pretty simple, right? We even give you the script. It's really easy to create that VPN. So you saw that inside of that, when I create a new virtual machine, I can choose which virtual network to connect it to. I choose none. Or I can choose my AD VNet, which is what I already created, because Joey's actually been running up until recently. And we look at this one, it's more properly configured. My Cisco router, I did an office move. Office moves at Microsoft are pretty notorious. They happen quite often. I did an office move and I haven't moved my router over, so you'll see it's not connected. But you'll see that I actually created 3 different networks, a front-end network, a back-end network, and one specifically for AD where my domain controllers sit. And I extended that out. I have a public IP address that I can connect to. And if I want to, can we all see this? I'll zoom in. I can download my VPN device configuration. Choose exactly what I want, and it spits out a script, and you do a find and replace for all the variables that you need to have to add for your specific location, and it creates that network connection and extends your network up into Windows Azure. Prior to coming into this, was anybody intimidated by Azure? A little bit? Just seems a little bit wonky. Are we feeling better now? Are we feeling better now? Yeah. Okay. I used an extreme use case scenario. This is great for dev test. Dip your toes in it. Right? Start taking a look at it. It's not a roach motel. What goes up can come back out. Okay? You can monitor and manage these things just like you monitor and you manage the servers you have today. It's just a Windows server. It's just a Linux server. You've got SCOM running. Load your agents. If you're worried about having to pay for the network, right, because anything that goes into Azure is free, anything outbound you pay for, what's a solution that we could do to mitigate or limit the amount of traffic inside of OpsMan back into my core data center? What can we use? What can we deploy up there? A gateway, right? Deploy a gateway up into the cloud so that my 14 servers in the cloud talk to it, and then it just talks back down. So instead of having all 14 servers constantly talking, we collect the data and bring it down at intervals. We can control that. It's just the same thing. You do not need to learn a brand new skill set in order to deploy and manage virtual machines in Windows Azure. Just a few little nuances that we covered here. And I kind of ticked all the boxes through all the little craziness inside of Windows Azure and showed you some cool demos. All right? Good? Yes? All right, if you, yes, sir, question. I can't see.
I didn't know if you were taking questions. Sometimes we think about network throughput, SAN throughput, and some boxes have multiple network cards, and you think about saturating with SAN. How do you deal with that?
Okay, so his question was, we think about network throughput and SAN throughput and all these things and talking and all of that stuff. How do we deal with that here? We're really not, because we're not responsible for that underlying infrastructure that we've got there. We can run the tests, right? Because our data centers, and I can't get into the architecture of our data centers. We have some guys that do regular tours and come out and talk about our data centers, but I'm not kind of in that loop to actually publicly disclose how they're all running, right? But you have to understand, when we take a bet on something inside of Microsoft, the data centers and the technologies that we have in there, and we all know about the storage enhancements in Server 2012, right? Yes, hopefully. If not, go attend one of those IT camps and learn about all the storage enhancements inside of Server 2012, particularly around performance. Or go check out Microsoft Virtual Academy, because my buddy Rick from Canada, formerly from Canada, now in Washington, he's done a great session on that stuff, so you can check that out. Do the same test that you do. Look, I'm not saying that every single thing that you're running in your data center needs to be running in Azure. You have to make that decision. You have to decide, perf-wise, does it make sense? Cost-wise, does it make sense? Do we have compliance issues? What this is, it's another option for you. It's another way for you to kind of leverage technology to your benefit. Because, guys, we all know this. People don't just pick up the phone and go, hey, IT, just want to let you know everything's running great today. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, right? No, they call you because the entire house is burning down. And the entire house is burning down all the time. We need to stop. We need to start thinking of ways that we can get away from the day-to-day firefighting and start looking at expanding IT. IT is so important in business today and so valuable to business, but our budgets are being cut. Our staffing is being cut. That's a reality, even though actually IT is a really good place to be working right now. There's a ton of jobs out there, particularly around cloud. There's so much pressure on us, we have to be able to respond to these things quicker. And waiting for 6 weeks for a server to be put in place and all the stuff that has to be done sometimes just doesn't work. So you've got to take those trade-offs there. And so to kind of roundabout answer of your question, evaluate it. Take a look at it. Does it meet what your needs are? Right? Does it meet what your needs are? Hey, it was great for an FTP service. It was off the cuff, and I had that up and running. 2 hours, guys. That's the amount of time I spent. 2 hours getting that infrastructure up. To have, what, 5 or 6, I think, FTP servers up and running. I spent more time, actually, waiting for the data to copy up than I did in waiting for these machines to be configured. Oh, there's one thing in the last minute and a half that I just totally forgot to show you. Everything that you saw me doing in the portal today, I was zoomed. Everything that I showed you in the portal today. Anybody seen this guy here? This is PowerShell. You can do management, you can do deployment, all via PowerShell. So let me show you a script. This happens to be the script that I ran, and I'm not kidding. I had a couple of issues with my Linux VM not responding, so I couldn't putty into my Linux VM. So I went in that machine that I showed you with the 15 different disks, about an hour before lunch, I deleted that entire deployment. And then I executed this script. And it basically goes in, and it says, use this image, which is one of the Microsoft-based image. I want you to configure my server 2012. I want it to be an extra large instance. I gave it a name of the image, so I've created a couple of variables. I've added 16 disks, each one of them a terabyte. And then I said new Azure VM called SC Universe 13. I want you to give it the VM name, and I want you to put it in West US, and I clicked execute. And it ran and it created it. And before I went to lunch, it was already done. And then I went out and deployed my Linux server just before I came up on stage here. And you saw I can connect, I can do all those demos that I needed to do. It's all managed via PowerShell. I can upload my own virtual machine disks using PowerShell. Add Azure VHD, pointed it to my VHD, add Azure disk, disk name my data disk, gave it the location. I used a variable there. Sean in Ottawa, don't make fun of my PowerShell scripts anymore, please. He's still going to do it. And you'll see that in my uploads directory here, and that's a script I ran, there's that VHD that's running there. And actually, what's in that VHD is my PowerPoint slide. And I could simply add this disk to that, to any one of my running VMs, and there's my PowerPoint slide that I've got there. All right, I've got 3 red zeros sitting down here, which means that I'm out of time. I have to thank Catapult for having me down here. It's awesome getting back to Texas. I'm going to eat barbecue tonight until I bleed. I make my own at home, but sometimes it's just not the same. It's just not, I mean, I'm doing pretty good, but. And also, guys, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to me ramble on and on. I hope it was valuable. Remember, you can find all of this stuff in the Windows Azure Platform Training Kit. You can find my sessions on the Microsoft Virtual Academy talking about Windows Azure. Go out, get a trial, play with it a little bit, start poking your toes in that water of the cloud. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much.
Job well done, Joey. Thank you, man. Very much. Oh,
Thanks.
There you go. All right. So we're going to take a break. I know everybody wants to know that, but before you leave, so a reminder, we have the drawing for the MMS badge that is at the fishbowl that's out at the snack table. So it's a chance to be able to go get ice cream. I'm not sure what else is out there.
We've actually moved it. It's going to be at the registration table when you came in. Sorry about that.
That's cool. Registration table. So we all know where it's at. Make sure you get a business card in there. Again, if you don't have a business card, you can use one of ours that are there. Put your information on it for the drawing. We're going to reconvene at 4:25. We got some great giveaways going at that point in time. I think the Unleashed books are coming up next.
That's correct.
Excellent. So we will reconvene at 4:25. And for those who are here on time, we're going to make a big announcement, something related to Pete in System Center Central that has not been discussed up to this point in time. So at 4:25, we're going to launch that. So see y'all then.
So we're getting closer to System Center Universe, and things have been going really well. And in fact, our CEO, Sam, has been extremely motivational in helping to get the team ready.
Attention! Listen up, people. It's lightning round for the panel discussion. Can you have multiple addresses?